What's up, everybody? Welcome to You Rankin with me. Today we are here ranking MCU Phase 4. This has been a long time in the making. First off, we had to wait for Phase 4 to finish. Then we had to wait for Wakanda Forever to drop on Disney Plus. And I know some of us had to catch up with the shows because we're ranking not just the films in the MCU Phase 4, but they started television shows. They started specials. So now we have a lot of MCU going on in Phase 4. I don't know. We're probably going to get even more in Phase 5 and Phase 6, all that stuff coming down the road. We'll get there when we get there. But for now, we're doing Phase 4. It's been a long time. So let's mention, I forgot to say, I am your host, Chad Webb. Over there, we have the co-host, James Hancock, and then we have my wife, Kerri Webb.
Hi.
And we have my good buddy, Dylan Randazzo. As always, we're the panelists for the MCU. So, and we all have, I don't know, maybe some hot takes, some medium takes, some pretty basic takes. I don't know. I'm excited to find out. Let's get started on just saying how all this works. If you haven't seen any other episodes, we've prepared our own list. There's 17 things, movies, shows, specials in our lists, and we've all prepared them prior to the show. How we're going to do it, since there's 17, let's just do wait for it if there's the top 5. We haven't discussed this prior, but yeah, if it's in your top 5, I would just say, do you guys think 5 or 10?
I'm good with 5.
5 sounds good?
Yeah,
all right,
sure.
if it's in your top 5, someone says something that's in your top 5 at 17, 16, 15, whatever, just go, wait for it. That's in my top 5. Hold off on that one. I got that in my 5. Whatever you want to say to let us know that you love that thing that we just kind of shit on. So, yeah.
Foreshadowing much.
Oh, maybe. I don't even know. Potentially. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I will start with my 17, and then we'll go around the bend to Kerri, James, Dylan, and then back to me. And at number 17, I think no one is going to be surprised with this. It's Eternals.
Top
It's
5, Chad.
My least favorite.
Top 5. We're
It's
saving
top
it for later,
5.
please.
All right. Kerri, what is your 17?
My 17 is What If.
No top 5? All right, James.
I put She-Hulk.
She-Hulk. All right, Dylan.
17 is Thor: Love and Thunder for me.
All right. No top 5s for that? Okay. All right. So now we don't have any doubles, so we should just go into 16, or should we talk about any of the ones that aren't in the top 5? Let's just go to Kerri's 16 until we get a couple.
Okay. My 16 is She-Hulk.
All right. That's some overlap there. James, what is your 16?
I put Hawkeye.
All right. Dylan.
My 16 is Miss Marvel.
Okay. And then mine is What If. So I think that's actually 2 overlaps now. We can discuss 2 of these.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and discuss first She-Hulk and then What If. And when it gets to you, if you just want to say where you had it, it'll probably get repeated, but we'll go through it. I'll just start with one of these. She-Hulk. I actually had She-Hulk at 12. She-Hulk is a very interesting one. This was one of the last shows. I think it was the last show that we got from the MCU. So we had, I think, some really great highs with the show, some really lows that didn't really hit everyone the same. And She-Hulk, I think you either love it or you just didn't really care for it all that much, potentially. Is that my 12? My 12, because I like certain parts of it. I really like, tell me, Maslavi? What is her name?
Tatiana Maslany.
Tatiana Maslany, thank you. I really like her in the role. I really like some of the parts, there's a really cool, when she's dating this guy that turns out to not be such a great guy. They have a montage. Yeah, so the montage that I really love in there is like she's dating this one guy, and then like he turns out to not be like a great guy, but she really likes him, and it's like a montage set to Haim, the band, and I love that song. So I like some of the craft of the show. I think a lot of the dating stuff they try to do like kind of like lawyer sitcom kind of a thing, which is really cool. The only stuff that I don't like, it just didn't really seem like it had much of a direction to it. It felt like there was like, that's just a day in the life of a lawyer, but it felt like everything like really came easy to her. And there just wasn't that much. The only kind of like conflict was, is she going to be able to find a boyfriend? And I'm like, that's the only conflict in the show that's like about feminism and is supposed to like, prop up feminism and stuff like that. I just thought like a lot of that stuff was the weak parts, but I kind of adored that final episode when they went really meta. And if the whole show was like that episode, I think it would have been incredible. I won't spoil it. It's a really great episode. But yeah, I like She-Hulk. Didn't love it though.
Yeah,
She-Hulk.
this was my number 16. And I agree with you about the final episode, and I wish the show overall was more like that final episode. I was so excited when they like released that the title of the show was going to be She-Hulk Attorney at Law. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be fantastic. And then the trailer dropped, and I was like, not my type of show. I think it's just well, not even the CGI. I don't even really care that much about that. It's mostly like, I don't know, it's just not my type of humor that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Very like sitcom-y kind of. Just the jokes for me, a lot of them just didn't land very well. I wish I had liked it more. I really did like the character. And I thought the acting was fantastic. Like the characters in this are really great. I just kind of, I guess I was not as happy with like the story and I don't know, the tone of it.
Yeah, and maybe if like you said, like it's attorney at law, maybe if they would have went harder on like different really neat cases, like they did that a little bit, but it's just it wasn't like the the case show that like it could have been. Hopefully, maybe if there's a season 2, maybe they'll get more into that. But
yeah.
Cool. James, what are your thoughts?
So I had this one last, and I pretty much agree with like what Kerri had to say with like kind of how the story went, and humor just didn't work for me. The jokes didn't really land at the end of I forget what episode it was, but where the Hulk is talking to her, saying how Steve Rogers lost his virginity on the USO tour, and she's like, Captain America, fuck, and then like it cuts off. Like that wasn't funny to me. I don't think that was that good. Like I think it like tried too hard in parts. I just couldn't get behind it. I'm glad they were half-hour episodes. I'm glad I watched it as it released on Disney Plus because I don't know if I can get through 9 of or 8 of however many they had at all at the same time. It just kind of didn't do it for me. I did like seeing Tim Roth back as Abomination.
Yeah.
I like they brought back his classic Abomination style character too. He looked different from the Ed Norton film, so I appreciated that. I like the Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock. That was really cool when they brought Daredevil back in. I did appreciate that, and that's the thing. And these movies always do something to keep me watching it anyway. So that's kind of what I appreciated more about this show. Was if anything, is Abomination and Daredevil.
Yeah, I think the humor definitely like kind of strays a little younger. So I think maybe if like you're not into like the new age kind of jokes, like maybe it's not your style. Dylan, what you think of the show?
Yeah, I actually had it right where you had it, Chad. I had a 12. I think it's good. I think I gave this a positive rating. I think because it knows what it wants to be. It's like, not trying to be anything too serious or game changing. It's trying to be a sitcom, and it kind of sticks with that through the end. And I like that. I like when a film or TV series can just kind of be its own thing. I think where it kind of falters a little bit is when you look at the grand franchise as a whole, and it kind of does feel like just lesser stakes. It doesn't feel like it's at the same quality in terms of like emotional depth as some of the other things, but on its own I think it works really well as like a cute little sitcom. I don't think all the jokes land, but some of the jokes were funny. I like the idea of this lawyer going through her every day, and you have like the shape-shifting elf who tricked the one guy into thinking she was someone else. Like little things and characters that you really can't put anywhere else in the MCU. It's like, why don't we just kind of bring this band of misfits here? And it was just kind of fun to kind of explore different types of personalities in the MCU. I really enjoyed it. I think Tatiana Maslany's great. I think where it struggles is being a superhero in terms of the action. Like, I don't think the action's anything memorable. I couldn't even pinpoint an action scene that like stands out to me except for the training with Hulk at the beginning. But then again, the training with Hulk in the beginning has nothing to do with the law stuff. I mean, the series is about a lawyer, and we don't even get introduced to the law aspect till episode 2. So I think I would have started with episode 2 as the premiere, and then episode 2 then go, oh, here's how I got my powers, by the way. Because then when you start it off as like, oh, I'm going to train with my brother, the Hulk, or my cousin, Bruce, it's like, and it goes into total 180 the second episode. But otherwise, aside from that, it's not super high on the list, but I did enjoy it for what it was. It knows what it wants to be. It knows its identity. And I do like the feminist messaging, even if it's a little on the nose. I think this franchise needs a little bit more on the nose, considering it has a younger demographic in general. So I think that's important. So I like it. Don't love it, but it's good enough for me to put it in my like middle tier of these things.
Yeah, great thoughts. All right, we're going to move on to What If. Kerri, what are your thoughts on this one?
Okay. Yeah, this was my lowest ranked at 17. It's mostly because the episodes were just very hit or miss for me. Some of them I really enjoyed, and other ones I just wasn't feeling as much, or I just would find myself like spacing out during them or getting easily distracted. I think it's a really cool concept, and I think they are doing additional seasons of it. And I do look forward to those additional seasons, but I think for me, the episodes were just so inconsistent that it was a little bit more difficult to enjoy.
Do you think it was like mostly like the actual concepts that they chose, or that it was animated?
I guess more the concepts that they chose. I don't know how they could have, maybe because it was animated. I gravitate towards animated stuff though. Like most shows I watch for fun are animated. I think, but maybe you're right that it just didn't hold my attention, but I also don't see how they could have done the series that they did with it being live action.
Definitely. James, what do you think?
So I had What If at 14, just a little bit higher. I thought it was a pretty interesting concept. I think I liked for most of the episodes. I liked it just for what it was. I'm glad it didn't try to like necessarily be anything more than like just the alternate scenarios. I do like towards the end how there's a bit of continuity with like Ultron realizing like, the Watcher is kind of in control and he kind of breaks loose and all that kind of stuff. That was kind of interesting to me. But I think as far as like the rest of the phases, there was just more that I found more interesting than this. So that's at 14.
Great. Dylan.
Yeah, this one was my number 15, so it was a little lower on my list, kind of close to the bottom, my bottom 3, but I still like it. I think the animation does bring like a cool new side of style to Marvel, and you don't have the burden of the unfinished visual effects because the budget's so low. You can make these dazzling effects with animation. I think that's a plus. I think the negative for What If is that it's such a great idea, like all these different little stories and anthology type things, but in the end, they try to connect it all. And I wish they hadn't. I wish they had kept it an anthology thing. Like it felt like a comic book. You open up a new story and then it's done. You don't have to think about it. But then at the end, it's like, oh, now we're going to tie them all together. And that's where it kind of lost me. But I was on its wavelength until then. I think recasting some of the voice actors, some of them were a little bit more noticeable than others. Kelsey and I on our podcast famously did not like Mick Wingert's performance of Iron Man. But again, you're not going to capture Robert Downey Jr. every time. But, I do think it was fun to get some of those performances from actual Marvel actors. It's just with the non-Marvel actors, there was a little bit of a clash. But I still like it, but not enough to put it like in that middle or higher tier for me.
No, I mean, I actually agree with like what all of you have said. It's a great idea, and I love some of that. Like, I think the zombie episode was really cool. Like, there's a lot of like different ones that are like very interesting. Even if like I didn't like love any one specifically that much. And I don't think, I think I agree with Kerri. It couldn't have been done any other way. It had to be animated because they're doing crazy stuff, and like, how are they going to get all those actors together to do all these, interesting things? But yeah, I'm more excited for maybe a season 2 to see if they have some concepts that come out that I'm a little bit more interested in. Because I think it's a little bit, hit or miss with the concepts, and it's like, I'm always interested more to see what the title of the thing is than the actual episodes themselves. And yeah, Dylan had a great point saying it shouldn't have been as connected. The MCU is so connected. Why not just like let these things be not connected? And that way you can have Deadpool come out at one point and kill the entire Marvel universe in one of them. That would be incredible if they did that. I would love, and because I don't think they're going to do a movie version of that unless that's what Deadpool 3 is. I think that could be really done great in animation. So
just one little thing before we continue, Chad, just in case someone sees me hold this up. This is sweet and sour sauce, not blood. I don't want people to think.
Okay. And I had what if at 16? I already said that, but reiterate. All right, moving on to 15, and we'll start with James.
I put Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 15.
All right. Dylan, 15.
My 15, as I just said, was What If.
All right. Mine is Black Widow. Kerri?
My 15 is Eternals.
Okay. So then we're going to go to Dylan for 14.
Yeah, my 14 is Chad's 15. It's Black Widow.
All right. My 14 is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then Kerri, what's your 14?
My 14 is Hawkeye.
Okay. We didn't. James, what is your 14?
We technically did. Mine was What If.
Okay, cool. All right. So now we do have a couple we can talk about now. We have Black Widow and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And Hawkeye all had 2 votes. So let's go with Black Widow first. James, do you want to start with Black Widow?
Yeah, sure. So I actually had this up at number 10.
Okay.
I guess this was still kind of an interesting concept. And this was kind of the first movie back in the theater for Marvel since the whole shutdown thing. So I always appreciate Marvel cinematic experiences, even if the movie's not that great. But this one, I thought it was actually pretty fair for what it was. I liked the characters. I guess maybe the Taskmaster thing was cool enough. I thought I like Olga Kurylenko. She's pretty cool. But I think what I have it at, I put it at 10. Yeah. And I like David Harbour. I like all the actors. The story was interesting enough, but I feel like it probably could have had the show, and then Hawkeye could have been the 2-hour movie, because I feel like there's more to Black Widow that we could get from her. I think the Russian KGB spy thing has a really interesting kind of history and backstory to it, which would have been kind of cool for them to go more into. So I think there's just more they probably could have done with Black Widow. That's all.
Yeah. Dylan, what do you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed Black Widow more when I saw it in the theater because of what James said. It was that return back to Marvel on the big screen. There are 2 reasons why I put it lower, though. One being, I think Black Widow is not the most interesting person in her movie. I think Yelena steals the show, Florence Pugh, and David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz. I think there's other people around her that stand out more than her. I think she's still great, but it's also I'm much more interested in these side characters than I am her. And I think part of that is because they decided to release this after we've already lost her. And I feel like there's kind of the stakes, again, don't feel as big because we know where this ends up. And I think if this were released after Civil War, when it takes place in the timeline before Infinity War, I think this would have been a lot better received, because I think the stakes for Natasha have been greater. But when we know she ends up okay at the end of this, and then she goes on to die later, it means a little less, I think, watching it. It has less of an impact for me. And then another thing is just that she's such a great hero. She has such a great fighting style, hand to hand. Hers doesn't rely on any superpowers or any big weapons. Yet they decide to have the final act of this movie take place as everything's falling from the air, in the middle of the air, and they're jumping from set piece to set piece, and it's fire and explosions. I wish it was a more grounded finale, because this is a much more grounded character. And I wish we can kind of go back to the Winter Soldier type action and not need to make these giant, big spectacle fight scenes in Act 3, because also, again, which will be a common occurring theme for at least my list, the visuals have not been amazing in Phase 4. I think it's because of all the stories we've heard about the workers being underpaid, overworked, treated horribly, and I think it shows in Phase 4 especially. And I think they didn't need to. They could have just had a really good, intense fight on the ground with Dreykov and with the Taskmaster. I didn't think you needed all all of it. It was a little excessive, but I still like the family drama at the center. I really like the characters and the performances especially. So I like it. It grows on me, and then I watch it and it falters again. But every time I think about it more, I like it more. So I don't know. This may end up higher in the future, but 14.
I actually totally get that, because yeah, I really liked Black Widow. Like, yeah, the return to the theaters was a really cool thing about it, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I talked to Kerri, and I was like, I really liked that. Like at the end of seeing it in the theater, and it started like with that like really cool like cover of the Nirvana song, "Smells Like Teen Spirit," I think, right? And yeah, I liked a lot of this. I do think Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Rachel Weisz were all like really great additions. But then also, yeah, like you said, like she kind of feels like a side character in her own movie a little bit. But like, and then it does become like this big, like it doesn't even seem like it could really happen with how her character is and it just seems so unrealistic at the end there. I do think, I don't know if James alluded to this, but I do think maybe if they would have given Black Widow her own kind of like Winter Soldier type show with like espionage and stuff like that, kind of going through different phases of her life, maybe that could have been really cool. And you could have like really focused on times, even though we know what happens to her later, if the stuff that we're seeing in the now is really interesting, then it wouldn't matter. It's almost like, watching Better Call Saul, what happens to a lot of those characters, but the stuff in that show is still very interesting and exciting. And you could have had like other characters introduced that, so yeah, I think Black Widow could have been served better. I enjoy some of what's in there still, but yeah, it just feels like kind of more middle tier for me. I had this at 15. So,
Cool.
Kerri, Black Widow.
I had this at 8.
Okay.
I really love this movie, and part of it's like I'm a sucker for a sister story, and this was, generally just a family.
Those parts were good, yeah.
Yeah, and Florence Pugh is just one of my favorite actors working. So, and I absolutely adored her character. So I do agree that she does outshine Black Widow in this movie. For me, that wasn't really a negative, just because I enjoy seeing her on screen so much. I don't know. I love that this movie, like, at the end, they come back together as a family. I love like that Antonia at the end, like, kind of is deprogrammed and forgives. Overall, yeah, I've watched it. I think we've seen this a couple times now, and I've just really enjoyed it each time we've seen it. So it just ranks a little higher for me.
Hell yeah. All right. Now we're gonna go on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Dylan, would you like to start with this one?
Yeah, this was right at my top 10. This is number 10. Again, like I think a lot of the strengths of Phase 4 is in its thematic stuff and like the representation, the lessons being learned. And I think there's a really great lesson to be learned about racism and stuff that they really hadn't talked about much aside from like Black Panther, but even Black Panther is a little different. Like I really liked how they talked about racism in America and the idea that like, you're handed something that should be this amazing thing, but you realize as a Black man, there's a different mantle you hold and a different way people perceive you. And I think that's such a brilliant choice. I think where the show gets lost a little is in some of the side plots, like you have Zemo and then the Flag Smashers and then the Power Broker and all these things where it almost felt like they added so many elements because they wanted a series and they wanted to pad time. I think this would have been better as a movie. I think a lot of these series don't necessarily feel very episodic. It almost feels like a long movie that they needed to chop up in parts. And I wish this had just been a movie because I think the central themes that are going on are so strong. And it really dives in more than any other film or show into what happened with the blip in terms of people losing their jobs and their homes and then having to like relocate and then being homeless because their homes when they were gone for 5 years were given to someone else. I think that's really, really awesome. And I think those bits keep me going back to the show. And the performances too. The training montage with Sam Wilson is so cool. But yeah, I think it's got its issues have to do with like the structure and the actual like function as a television show. But I think what it's trying to say and the themes and everything are really, really strong. So I'm a big fan of this one.
If you couldn't see with all my nodding, even though I have this ranked lower than Dylan, I 100% agree with pretty much everything he said. The reason why I rank it lower than Dylan, I think, is because every time I watch it, I go, why does this have to have? I mean, Bucky can be in it, but why does it have to? Why does his name have to be in there at all? Why can't this just be a show or a movie with just Falcon and his struggles? I think that is the most interesting part. The Isaiah Bradley, the Falcon, and him trying to come to terms with it. Because at the end of Endgame, you're like, oh yeah, he's going to become new Captain America. That's cool. And then he gives the shield away, and then you're like, how dare you? Steve picked you. Steve said you're going to be the new Captain America. Why would you throw that away? Oh, okay. Now I get to see like what's going on in Sam's, and such a great character study that I feel like it could have been better served with like less time with all the other stuff. Just throw all that stuff out. We don't care about the power broke or any of that stuff. The Flag Smasher stuff was kind of interesting. You could have even still had John Walker be the villain if you need like a big villain in the movie, but like, and to show why, Sam is that great hero to go against, whatever. But and then even like one thing that I kind of thought about when I was studying for a debate with this was that at the end with Isaiah Bradley, what he does is he gives him like that whole thing about dedicated to Isaiah Bradley. And then I was looking up, and a lot of people were saying that doesn't make much sense. That's actually kind of a betrayal to Isaiah Bradley, because he wouldn't, like, he spent years trying to not have his name in the thing, and that do a plaque with him is kind of a betrayal of that character. And like, I don't know, if you think that deep about it, I guess you can pull stuff like that out. But yeah, it's just so unfocused that I just really love a lot of the parts, but it's just the whole for me. I'd rather just skip around instead of watching the whole thing. So I ranked it a little bit lower. Kerri, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, this was number 13 for me. Was just a little sad because these are two of my favorite characters in the MCU. But I agree with everything Dylan and Chad have said. Like, this would have been way better served as a movie. I think way better served with having Sam's plot a little bit more primary. I think you could have still maybe had a Bucky subplot, but it was honestly the weaker of the two storylines by far. And a lot of the other plot points were just, like Dylan said, it seemed like there to fill out time. And I think this could have actually been a really tight, like 2.5 hour movie. So yeah, that's mostly why it just because it was, especially after, I think this was the first one that came out after WandaVision, which in my opinion, WandaVision was fantastic. And this was a little bit of a letdown after such a fantastic show.
Yeah, and especially if you put Falcon and Bucky together, you get a lot of that kind of, in my opinion, cringe humor when they're together. And
they kind of like forced a lot of that. Yeah.
Are you doing a staring contest with me right now? Like, get it, it's okay, whatever.
I don't know if it was like they need Captain America to like, because they're very funny together in
the movie, in
the Civil War, but in the show it just didn't work as well.
Yeah. James, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, so I had Falcon and the Winter Soldier at number 15. I did think it was interesting when they kind of reveal at the end, like, the whole political twist on it, because that's what a lot of the Captain America movies have, like, kind of been about. So the whole, like, what happens to people who came back after the blip, because it's not really addressed in the movies. Like in a Spider-Man movie, everyone just comes back into existence, and like that's that. Like no one's questioning or having any problem with this, or there's no conflict at all. And I know I mentioned this in the a previous ranking, but if you got snapped out of existence while you're flying in an airplane 35,000 feet in the air, and that movie establishes that you get snapped back into existence where you left, well, I hope there's a plane up there, and I hope you're in it, because you got snapped back into existence 35,000 feet in the air. So it didn't really do much to address that. So at least this movie touched up on that a good bit, which I appreciated. I do kind of actually like political twists that Captain America has. But I think what I couldn't get behind in this one was the whole, like, 16-year-old girl-led terrorist group. Like, I'm sorry, like who in their right mind had the? I'm sorry.
Carly Morgenthau.
Yeah. But like they had that French terrorist guy from Captain America 2 when he fights him on the barge. Like, how on earth is he taking orders from some, I don't know, 16-year-old girl? And then when they're in the warehouse fighting and she kills the friend, and then Captain America, like, rages out and he smashes the one guy in the face with the shield and like bashes his head in, but the guy's like on the ground screaming like, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. Like, no one cares. You're a member of the terrorist organization. You can't complain that you're getting a bit of comeuppance from freaking the Falcons from Captain America because you killed one of his friends. Like, no, that takes me out of it kind of when they put that whole spin on that. A lot of it seems like play fighting. You might hear me say that a good bit with some of these Marvel movies, but it's play fighting, and then they accidentally kill someone, and some dude's like, "No, don't kill me. I didn't do it." And nah, man, sorry, I'm not having it. This doesn't really work. So it's kind of stuff like that I can't really get behind. I don't mind the whole like kid power aspect of these. I know some of they're trying to set up like the Young Avengers or something like that, or they might do that in the future. But in this case, I just couldn't get behind it. I just couldn't. And you're right, Chad. I agree. Like some of like the scenes where they try to like kind of force the humor with Bucky and Sam, it didn't work. Like I feel like Sebastian Stan makes a better like Winter Soldier maybe than he does Bucky, or he needs to always be like fighting alongside someone or be in like some action moment to be good. But that's just what I got from the show. But we saw him and like his personal side, I think, or the way he converses with people, and I don't know if it quite did it for me either.
Yeah, I always love James's takes. They're hilarious. I love when he like gives us lessons on guns. But yeah, James reminded me about like the whole thing. Like, think about if someone blips in at the same exact place and time that someone else is, are they going to fuse together? Can we get a horror movie from the MCU that happens?
I was gonna say almost like a Happening type thing where they're looking at the sky and people are just following.
Yeah. Or just like flinching in Harry Potter. All right. And then there was one other thing that I was gonna talk about, but anyways, it's fine. We can move on. What should we do now? 13? Hawkeye. I'll start with Hawkeye because that's where we're at, I think, in the order. Hawkeye, I really liked. I actually had Hawkeye at 11, but I really liked it. I think Haley Steinfeld is really, really great in it. I think she has really great chemistry with Jeremy Renner. Get well soon, Jeremy. I love how it's set around Christmas. I love, like the arcs that are presented. There's a cute little dog. Somebody from Better Call Saul's in it, which is really cool. What is it? Vera Farmiga's her mom, which is really cool. I don't know. There's not really too much to say. I mean, there's like a really cool LARPing part. I don't think like the whole main story is like really all that interesting. I think a lot of like the parts are better than like the whole sum, like when Kingpin shows up, and then you have the fun like MCU musical that I was like, they should do that for real, and Dylan's like, no, they can't because they are.
Well, they can't on Broadway. They can't on Broadway, but they are in the theme parks. They're doing it at Disneyland. Yeah, they're going to do a stage show, like a 30-minute show of Rogers and musical, which is cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. So there's a lot of really great parts with that. I like the aesthetics, the acting, the holiday that it surrounds. It's just a great like Christmas watch. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. But I had it at 11. Kerri.
Yeah, I had this at 14. I liked some parts of this. Like, I really liked how they actually incorporated Hawkeye's deafness into this one.
Yeah, true.
And the villain was deaf as well. Right? Or
What's her name?
Echo or Maya Lopez. Maya Lopez.
Yeah, Maya.
I love the dog, and I love that Yelena was in it because I love her. I'll say Hawkeye definitely isn't like my favorite character by far. So I think that's a lot of it. I liked Kate Bishop in some aspects. I liked her growth, but I don't know. For me, this one just ranked a little lower just because I didn't find the two main characters, as compelling.
Fair. James, what do you think about Hawkeye?
All right, so Hawkeye I had at number 16, and this is one of those I guess I just couldn't get behind again. The whole issue here is that you have Hawkeye being the main hero in all these situations, and he works well as a complement to the other superheroes. I think when he's in a group of superheroes fighting all of the villains, the problem with him is his weapon of choice is a bow and arrow, which has not been a primary weapon of usage in combat for an incredibly long amount of time. There's no way a group of Kingpin's thugs are that slow to the trigger that they get killed by a bunch of archers. I'm sorry, but it just, that kind of thing just takes me completely out of it. Like, I'm sorry. Like when he's on that bridge and he shoots that arrow all the way, he arcs it up and then it comes back down or whatever he's trying to do to fend them off or something. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, dude. You'd be on the ground. I'm sorry. Like that kind of stuff just kind of takes me out of it. And the end when mom was complaining about like when she got arrested, and she's like, and especially when I don't like it when daughters arrest their mothers on Christmas. Like, I'm sorry, maybe don't commit crime on Christmas then if you don't want to get arrested on Christmas. Like, you can't complain about that shit and then get full like to support. I'm sorry, like that took me out of it also. I did like the Kingpin bits, those were pretty interesting. I think we got a bit of an off-screen death for somebody at the end of that series when Maya and him in the that alleyway and she's gunning him, but the camera pans away. I'm praying Marvel did not kill Kingpin off behind the screen. I'm pretty sure he's going to be back. So,
Yeah.
But it's just one of those like, I think it's kind of a cop-out ending when you have an off-screen death like that. Like, oh, who got shot? What's going to happen? But the series to me just kind of wasn't. I just couldn't get into it. Maybe it should have been a movie. I could have like powered through a 2-hour movie. I think Hawkeye's only slightly less useless than Black Widow, so at least his arrows do stuff. But I just didn't like this series that much. I couldn't get behind Hawkeye.
Makes sense. Two quick things. One, I actually really did like that sequence in the car when he's driving and he can't really hear, but he's trying to tell. Yeah, the long take, and he's trying to tell her what to do. And she's like, "I don't know what this does," and then, stuff like that. I thought the filmmaking in that was so incredible. And then the second thing, I just maybe Kerri, if you can, start a tally of how many times we say hashtag should have been a movie. All right, Dylan, what do you think about Hawkeye?
Yeah, Chad, we're in lockstep today. I added this at 11 as well. I think this is one of those things where like the Christmas of it all always has me coming back to it. Like I love it. But it's got the same issue that like Falcon and the Winter Soldier has in that it's so many different stories that they have to kind of tie up all together at the end to where like Kingpin is introduced like penultimate episode and like he's the big villain of the thing. Yeah. And then you have the mom who's a problem. And then you have the dad who's or the stepdad who's like the fake out. And then you have Yelena who's another obstacle. Then you have the LARPers. And then you have it's just so many things. And then Echo, Maya, we haven't even talked about it. Like it's just so many people involved that like I think if anything, this should have been a longer series, and like maybe each season of it is a different villain.
Oh yeah,
in this New York setting, or just elongated to 10 episodes because I just feel with 6 it was almost too crammed. Or make a movie and only focus on one or two aspects of it. Focus on Yelena and focus on the mom and Kingpin, and then don't worry about the Echo stuff. Or focus on Echo and Yelena, and then don't do the Kingpin stuff. It was just too much. That being said, I like the style. It has a lightness to it, but still has those moments where it can get deep, and we go into Hawkeye's past a little bit and you know his reflection on losing Natasha. I like Jeremy Renner best in this than I have in anything else he's done in the MCU, but even then I'm kind of along the wavelength of everyone else that he's not the most compelling character. He's always been like kind of that supporting character, so it's nice to see the reins kind of been passed, the bow and arrow passed. But I mean, there are very few crushes I have that are less than my crush for Haley Steinfeld. I love her, and I think that is also a reason I'm drawn to the show, and Florence Pugh too. Like the two of them interacting is like so much fun. They're so charismatic. they bring so much of their roles. It's just, I think Jeremy Renner, again, it's kind of like the Black Widow syndrome of he's the least interesting person in the room, even though he's got a lot of good stuff going on in his story. I think side characters are all more interesting, but I still like it. I still think it's an easy watch. I go back to it more than I expect to, but it doesn't quite crack the top 10 just because I don't think structurally, again, like I think they crowd it way too much to where the finale feels way too overflown, overblown, overfilled, overstuffed. But yeah, I do like it. And I like the scene Chad was talking about with the one take with the car. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot of great points there. I didn't even think about it being like too overstuffed, but that's I think why I didn't love it as much as I did initially. Are we going on to 13s now? Okay, and are we starting with me or you? All right, let's just start with me. My 13 is Miss Marvel. Kerri.
My 13, we already talked about Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
James, what's your 13?
I had Eternals at 13.
All right, Dylan, what's your 13?
My 13 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
That's a wait for it for me.
Oh, okay,
Kerri.
cool.
Okay.
Cool.
And then Kerri, what is your 12?
Well, actually, we could talk about Miss Marvel.
Let's talk about Miss Marvel then. And we will still wait for Eternals. It's the power of the top 5. All right. Miss Marvel, I'll go ahead and start. Yeah, Miss Marvel. I don't know. Like, I know so many people were like really hyped with the first episode. I think it is a really good first episode. I think it's like a really cool story about like this, this girl. Can I say girl? Is she that young?
Yeah, she is a child.
This girl who like kind of like I think got in through like social media or something, and then she got the part that way. And it's just like a really interesting story how like this kid like no one's heard of got this big part in a show, and now she's going to be in like movies and stuff like that in the MCU. It's like, could you imagine like just randomly getting a part like that? That's just incredible. I do like a lot of the stuff with like the family and how they, it's like they're like Muslim and stuff, so it's like representative of that, and they actually like dive into some of that like culture, like when they're at the mosque and they're praying and they're like, we're all back here and it's shitty back here and we're women. And it's like, well, yeah, that's actually like not a lot of people might not know stuff like that about like how it is in mosques, and it's like tradition and stuff like that. I think it's cool how they like mention like, oh, this is like you're a jinn or whatever, and it's like that's kind of like a genie or whatever. And I remember from like Supernatural, all that lore and stuff like
Jinn,
that.
Harry.
I think that's like a pretty cool like blend that they did, stuff like that. I think her powers look kind of weird, and stuff like that. Yeah, they kind of like make her friend take a back seat. Like he has this weird kind of plot where he's like going to go to school or something or across state, and they kind of like throw him to the side so she can go.
Chad, we don't talk about Bruno. We don't
Sorry.
talk about
So we can talk no. And then she like goes to where does she go? Pakistan?
Yeah, but like back in time.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's just like all a little bit kind of weird. And also I didn't really like her character all that much. She seemed like I remember watching and I was getting very mad because I was like, she just like ran her car into this is my James take. She ran her car into the driving instructor's car, and then later she has the gall to be like, can I still go to the Comic-Con? And it's like, if you're the parent, like, you just ran, you know how much this is going to take to like pay for, and you want to go to a Comic-Con, and then these people are nice enough to still go like, all right, you can still go, but you have to dress this way, and then your dad wants to dress like the Hulk, and you guys are going to have a good time together. And she's like, I wanted my own costume. I'm like, this spoiled little brat is going to smash her car into somebody else's car and then still get to go, get powers. She gets rewarded for all that. I don't know. Sorry, that was like my I got really mad about that. But yeah, anyways, I had this at 13. Good show, not great. Kerri, what do you think?
I disagree. I don't think her parents should be telling her how to dress. But okay, I had this at number 9. I was just really excited to see this on the screen because this is like when Chad was into comics. This was one of the few comics that I actually bought and read during that phase.
Was it faithful?
I don't remember because that was a very long time ago, but I was just really excited to see the character. I kind of wish they had kind of stuck with the format of the first episode that showed like her drawings and how she viewed things. Like they did that for the first episode and then not for the rest of them. I kind of wish they had at least kept some of that element, like maybe spread it out more throughout the series rather than just cramming it all in the first episode. But overall, I don't know. I really adore this character. I thought Iman Vellani did such a fantastic job. Like to me, she was just so endearing. I liked everything about like her going back into the past. I do see kind of some of the faults with this, but I hope if this does get like a season 2 or if she gets a movie, like, you know, things get improved a little bit and we get to keep with these characters that I really, really enjoyed.
All right, yeah, I'll go. So I actually had this at number 7. I was kind of surprised about this one. I ended up liking this one kind of a lot more than most of the other stuff in the Marvel shows, but it could be because I watched this one after watching Hawkeye and Winter Soldier and She-Hulk, which to me weren't all that good, of course. But I kind of liked I love the insight into like the tradition and culture. I always like when representation with that. I actually kind of did like all the characters. This show definitely caught me by surprise. I found myself interested in it. I was, itching to watch whatever episode was next. One thing that kind of caught me by surprise, which I always love in kind of media, is when it introduces you to new like music and songs. And the song at the credits of episode 5 I thought was like really, really cool. I like how like the beat of it was, and it was like a pop version of the song, but I like that a lot. I like how it sounded. I like the beat. I like the vocals. So like I found it on YouTube and listened to that like 100 million times. And then when she's watching all of the TikTok videos or whatever videos in the show, but it was Indian Summer by Jai Wolf, who I kind of like listening to. So it was kind of cool to hear that song like kind of playing in the background too. And this one just kind of caught me off guard a bit. I liked I thought the special effects were pretty not that bad actually. You get that kind of like Spider-Man style montage where she's like trying out her powers, trying to run up the pads and things like that. I thought it was done pretty well though. I actually ended up really liking this show.
Perfect. I heard a little bit of what Kerri was saying when I left, and I like the point that she made. Like they kind of abandoned that fun art style a little bit halfway through the show, and if they would have kept that, it probably would have been a little bit better. Dylan, what'd you think?
Yeah, I have this all the way at 16, right above the bottom, and I think it's for that very reason. And what Kerri said, it's like that first episode was so good. The style, the whole like comic book idea of all the words popping up and the art and the integrated with the production design and the text conversation where like the neon signs are lighting up and spelling out these text messages. I thought it was so cool. And it took place in Jersey City, 30 minutes from my house in Jersey. Love it. And then immediately episode 2, it just kind of like loses that style. It just becomes like this generic teenage show. And then episode 4, we're now going back in time with the whole clandestines thing. And it's just like, I wish it had stayed truer to that first pilot. It feels like a pilot that Kevin Feige saw and said, yes, absolutely. Let's keep going. Let's do it. And then they didn't follow suit. It's like the pilot was so good that it booked the show, but then the rest of the series just didn't match up. I was really disappointed because I do actually like Kamala Khan as a character. I like how she's a little spunkier and a little bit immature. It's a different type of character than we're used to seeing in the MCU. Even Spider-Man he's young, but he's still a little bit kinder and more generous. This girl's a little immature, but I think that's kind of a different character you're not used to seeing in the MCU that age. And I think that's going to speak to a lot of young girls. I just don't know if the actual series went in an interesting direction. And that love triangle thing, it's hard to buy love triangles for kids, because it's like these relationships aren't going to last, let alone when Bruno is supposed to be made to be like the more likable one, but is very clearly the more annoying one. I mean, like I really like the guy she ends up with, even though they're all kids, but the whole like, oh, my mom's the villain thing. Like that's, we've seen it in everything, but I did like that relationship. It's just, I don't know, it just didn't come together for me, and I wish it had. And I'm excited to see her movie come out later this year with Captain Marvel and with Monica Rambeau. See them, the three of them team up. We got a little tease of that in the post credits, so I'm excited for it. It keeps getting delayed, so I'm worried maybe there's some post production stuff, or maybe they're just trying to delay it to give them a better Oscar chance, push it later to the end of the year. I don't know, but I'm optimistic for this character. Didn't love the show.
Great points. And Dylan, Jersey City. Is there any chance her bike's still going to be there?
Oh no.
No, not at all. All right, so moving on. Definitely not. All right, what are we at, Kerri? We're doing 12?
12, yeah.
All right, and you want to start with 12?
Sure. My number 12 was Moon Knight.
Moon Knight, just outside of my top 5. All right, James, 12.
I had Thor: Love and Thunder.
Okay, Dylan, 12.
We talked about it. She-Hulk is my 12.
All right, and She-Hulk is also my 12. Okay, so nothing to talk about just yet.
No, we can talk about Thor: Love and Thunder.
Thor: Love and Thunder. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about that. James, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure. I didn't like this movie as much as I kind of wanted to. I feel like it looked different. Well, not that much different, but different to me then, because I'm the biggest fan of Thor Ragnarok, but this one actually made one look pretty good. I didn't really get much of like the attempted humor. I think the screaming goats were funny for the first couple of minutes, and after a while it was just like, I think this is kind of annoying now, and it's not quite as funny. I don't know, like maybe what Russell Crowe's motivation was for like maybe acting out Zeus in that style. Like that definitely didn't mesh with me that well, so I don't know how much like I liked that one. The whole like clingy Stormbreaker axe thing where it kind of floats in front of his face. Everybody's trying to eye up Mjolnir. So I mean, there are parts of it that did work pretty well. I mean, I liked I thought in the beginning I thought Gore was pretty cool. Like they kind of built him up to be more of a villain than he kind of ended up being, because he ended up like stealing the kids, which I guess I didn't really understand that much. But I like Christian Bale, so I was going to go see this movie anyway, just off the bat. I think he started off really strong, and then he just leaves his daughter with him in the end, I think, and I guess Thor just kind of accepts it, and I'm like, all right, that's kind of interesting, but fair enough. So then it's interesting that like the whole, you get one wish at the center of the earth, so it kind of played off of like that whole Wonder Woman thing, kind of like you go wish and then everything can change or whatever. Like that was okay to me. Like they portrayed eternity. My friend said this, my coworker said this, they portrayed it kind of like they did in the comics. So that part was like pretty good. But I think there a lot more of this didn't quite work for me. I did the scenes with Matt Damon and the play they put on it's always been pretty good in the last few movies. I thought we might have gotten more of the Guardians, but for them to dip out, I was okay with that too, because they probably should have got out of that movie anyway. I don't know why they want to be a part of it that much. It just didn't quite do it for me. Maybe it's better than Ragnarok in my opinion, but that's probably not saying much because everyone loves the movie. So this just wasn't that great.
Yeah, definitely. Dylan, all right, here we go.
Here's my only rant of the day. No, it's my number 17. I do not like this movie at all. I think Taika Waititi took the worst lessons from Ragnarok and leaned into the worst elements of Ragnarok, and the fact that like it's cool to kind of reinvent Thor as a character, but it was still serving a much more heavily stakes purpose in Ragnarok. You know, the world was literally ending, and I have issues with Ragnarok as is, but this one, it feels like they leaned even more into the idiotic humor, and it's even worse to hear him talk about the film in press junkets and be like, yeah, I just kind of filmed a bunch of stuff and just threw together what I wanted, and like, it's whatever. Like, he seems so careless about it. Like, you could tell his heart wasn't in this one, and it shows. And I think this is also the worst example of a lot of the issues we've been having with a lot of Marvel stuff. The visuals look terrible. I think it looks so unfinished, and this is the greatest example of bad visuals. And I think just the fact that there are masks on their faces that look like they're like pinned on with Photoshop and they're like bouncing up and down, when why not just make masks? Like, you have all this budget and you can't just make a mask for them to wear. You have to like make the CGI mask that doesn't even stay on their face. I didn't like that, but also just the design. It had like an ugly aesthetic. There was one cool aesthetic moment when they saw Gore and everything became like black and white. I think Gore is really good, but again, it feels tonally disjointed with this like super serious God Butcher, and then like the super silly screaming goat stuff and Zeus stuff, and then you've got like one of the main storylines is cancer, and that's something where in a movie that's so carelessly thrown together, and I'm fine for a movie that's just kind of like, let's just have fun, that's fine. But when you're talking about a movie about cancer, I just don't think that mixes very well, and it left me having a bad taste in my mouth. And it's also one of those things where it's the marvelness of, you think in your head, you're like, wait, so they can travel back in time, they can literally snap away half the universe, yet no one's come up with a cure for cancer. Like Thanos has this glove, can snap away half the universe. Why hasn't anyone thought to get all the Infinity Stones to snap away cancer? Like, it's one of those things where now you introduce all these other real things, and it's like, you're in the back of your mind, the more like scientific side of yourself is going, wait, but then that doesn't check. If this is a fantasy universe, wouldn't they have, it's one of those things. I think there was a poor choice to mesh those together. I don't find the comedy very funny. I think the Guardians was completely a cash grab. Just use them in the marketing, and not just use them in the marketing in like a cameo, but like they were pretty heavily marketed throughout the entire marketing. Like, it was, the trailers were mostly that first 10 minutes, first 5 minutes. And I think, if you are going this as a Guardians fan, like, yeah, you shouldn't go for, if you're a Guardians fan, you should go if you're a Thor fan. But at the same time, when they're marketing the Guardians so much, and then they leave 5 minutes in, and I don't even think like Rocket gets a line, maybe he gets one thing to say, like that's disappointing to me. It feels almost dirty on Marvel's part to just kind of use these characters for marketing sake, when you also set them up really well in Endgame. You set up this epic team up, and now we're never going to get to see it, because we know Dave Bautista said he's done after Guardians 3, so we know he's not coming back. Like, we're never going to get that story of the Guardians with Thor that they promised us. It's just so frustrating to me. It feels like there were 30 movies they wanted to make, and they threw them all together. And I just think Taika Waititi's attitude kind of adds to it. I think if I hadn't heard all of what he had to say about the movie, I'd maybe like it a little bit more, but I don't really respect how he talks about the movie, and how he seems to just like not give a crap. Like, I feel like at this point in the MCU, when you have literally all the visual effects department talking about how poorly they're treated and how terrible their experiences are, to have the director be like, whatever, it's in theaters, on to the next thing, whatever. Like, it just, I don't know. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I just don't ever want to go back and revisit this. And I wish I had, because I do, every time I watch Thor Ragnarok, I like it more, but I can't find myself liking this anymore. And it sucks, because I wanted to like this. I think the needle drops in the trailer were great. It's just, I really wanted to like it, and I just didn't. I like the fact that Korg's husband is named Dwayne The Rock, which is fun. But yeah, I was just disappointed.
Well, I'll say that I agree with about half of what Dylan said, because he made a lot of great points about how this movie could have been better. One slight nitpick in what Dylan was saying is that I don't know if this movie is the only one first one that introduced like something like cancer, because look at Guardians and Quill's mom. So it's stuff like that. But
yeah, no, that's a good point.
But that was before the world like knew for the most part about superheroes.
Yeah, true.
And before we knew that we could snap away half the universe with a glove. Like, I just think introducing the fact that this glove can do anything, and then this very next movie she's dying of cancer and there's really nothing they can do. Yeah. Except the hammer gives her strength or whatever, but then seemingly also drains her power. I don't know. It just felt dirty to use real life shit like that. Like, just give it maybe even an unnamed illness, or just make it that she's just weak from something. Maybe she was poisoned. Like, I think when you drop the C word, it becomes a lot realer for people, at least for me. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. And like, I think the whole thing, and the reason why because Dylan saying disappointing, it really does for a lot of this movie hit it on the nose for me. I had this a little bit higher at 10, but it's not like super high up, because I enjoy a lot of the movie. But yeah, I was also very disappointed, mostly because of the Jane Foster stuff. Like, it was like heavily I wasn't like super banking on like a Thor with the Guardians type of thing. I was more so wanting that, I don't want to say Lady Thor, because she is Thor in the comics. When she becomes, that whole storyline is about her getting cancer, getting the hand, like all that stuff happens, but it's so much stronger in the comic books. And I'm usually not like the comics did this and the movie did this, so the movie sucks kind of a deal. But like, honestly, I was like really hoping for some epic storyline where she becomes Thor, and then she takes over the mantle of Thor, and then Chris Hemsworth kind of like goes away, or maybe takes a smaller role or something like that. Because I'm like, we're phasing out a lot of the Phase 1 people, maybe Chris Hemsworth can start doing other things, and we can get a new Thor. Nope, Jane Foster done. Thor still now he's a kid, so I get it where it's kind of like, all right, the kid's adorable. I think that's his actual kid, so that's pretty sweet, and I'm kind of looking forward to more shenanigans with them. So it is kind of cool. I do think Gore was a little bit wasted in it, even though Christian Bale's acting his ass off in the movie. But I think my big disagreement with Dylan is that, and it makes sense because comedy is subjective. So like for me, a lot of the comedy really works for me. I like Taika Waititi's style. But I also do understand and I agree with James that the goat stuff does go on a little long, but like I still think it's really funny, like when they're doing their thing and then they run into the planet or moon or whatever the fuck happens in that movie, and then they start screaming after running. I think some of the timing of the jokes and stuff actually really works. You can see Kerri's already laughing. She really likes the humor in the movie as well, and I think if the humor at least works for you a little bit, I think you'd enjoy this movie a lot more. But if it doesn't work for you at all, then I don't see anything else in this movie working for you if the humor's not working. So for me, I enjoyed it a little bit more. It's in the middle, or almost in the middle. So yeah, I like it. I don't love it. I wish Jane Foster had a better story in it. That's my thing.
Okay. Yeah, I had this up as my number 6, like just out of my top 5. I really, really love this movie. Although I think, Chad and Dylan, your criticisms are super valid. And I actually haven't heard any of Taika Waititi's press junket on this movie. And now I definitely don't want to because I think it would probably ruin the movie for me.
We kind of knew he was a little bit of like a douche, but it's just like,
yeah, to just flaunt it is, it's not fun.
I wonder if he wasn't thinking about what his comments might mean, and he was just trying to have fun. But you never know.
I understand though, because it can, if you watch the movie and you hear those comments and think maybe like it wasn't put together very well or wasn't taken seriously enough, then I can definitely see that.
Or maybe he just kind of knows what these movies are. He's like, these aren't Oscar movies. These are just funny little movies that people do and make paychecks. But anyways.
Yeah. I don't know.
Not trying to super defend them. I'm just saying like maybe there's a different interpretation. I have no idea.
I don't know. I had said She-Hulk was not my type of humor, and this is like very much my type of humor.
You love Taika.
Yeah,
you love Taika.
I don't know, just like silly as hell. I don't know. I really love Thor, especially in this movie in Ragnarok. And I just love the characters in this, like Valkyrie. I thought Christian Bale did a fantastic job as Gore, obviously. I love that Korg narrates the movie. Even Russell Crowe, who I normally actually don't like, I thought he was really funny in this movie.
Yeah, his accent was funny. I like that.
I didn't mind him. I liked him.
And then obviously Jane Foster, I love her. And yeah, I do wish we had gotten to see either more of her or I don't know, just maybe her storyline had been a bit different. And I think especially now with Chris Hemsworth. And with Chris and I understand that they're taking the story from the comics, and they didn't know this at the time, but Chris Hemsworth is now taking a step back from acting. It could have been a really cool opportunity to set up Jane Foster as Thor. I also understand though, Natalie Portman probably, she left the MCU, I think, for a reason to begin with, and she probably doesn't want to keep doing these movies. And from a realistic perspective, that makes sense. And I gotta say, I really love this movie though. I find it hilarious. I love that at the end, Gore kind of chooses his daughter over everything else. Yeah. And then I just love the ending of this. I think it's so cute that Thor and Love's relationship, and we get the title of the movie in the last line of the movie.
Well, I was gonna say with the ending too that I loved is all the little kids getting powers.
Yeah,
which is really cute. They're just ah, and they're just I don't just think that's really funny when kids are doing stuff like that, and it kind of like mirrors something that happens at some point in Buffy
Yeah.
that I just think is so incredible. And there's another show that does something similar to something that happens in Buffy, and I love kind of those parallels. I don't know if they're like on purpose or if they're just me and my crazy Buffy mind going like, oh, that's something like that's Buffy.
Yeah. So I'll say I definitely understand the criticisms of this movie. I think they're completely and totally valid. But overall, this was one of the most fun movies, I think, in this phase. And I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now we're going to 11.
Yeah. Wait.
Are we talking about something else?
No,
I think we're on
11.
11.
11.
James talked about Thor.
All right.
First,
Are you
right?
first with 11? Yeah, he did.
Okay. I don't know.
Start with 11. Please.
Okay. My number 11 is Shang-Chi.
Yeah, we didn't do 11 yet. James, what's your 11?
Where
Shang-Chi, I'm sorry, is top 5 for me.
that is also actually, yeah, that's top 5 for me too.
Cool. What's your 11?
My 11 is Werewolf by Night.
Okay. Dylan, 11.
Yeah, ours is Hawkeye, Chad, I think.
That's right. Mine's also Hawkeye.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go on to 10 real quick. James, what's your 10?
We talked about it. Mine was Black Widow.
Okay, Dylan, 10.
We talked about mine. It was Fat W's, Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
And we talked about mine was Thor, Love and Thunder. Kerri, what's your 10?
My number 10 is Loki.
Top 5.
Yeah, wait for
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Wait for it.
All right, so now we're going on to 9s. Dylan, what's your 9?
My number 9 is James's 11, Werewolf by Night.
Okay. My number 9, I know it's a wait for it, Loki.
Wait for it.
Kerri, what's your 9?
My number 9 was Miss Marvel.
Okay. And then James, what's your number 9?
I had Doctor Strange at number 9.
That is top 5 for me.
Okay, but we can talk about Werewolf by Night.
Okay, let's talk about Werewolf by Night. We can start with James here, I think.
Yeah. So this was actually like kind of a cool concept. I like the whole, it's like one of the specials, so it's barely an hour long. It was interesting to me. I like the whole setup of they're trying to like kind of hunt for like finding that little maze thing. I think the one monster in there that helps, that's like knows the one guy is like the swamp thing or man thing or something like that. He's one of the characters. He's like an ancillary character, I think, in the Marvel comics, but I thought I saw him pop out of that maze. So that was like interesting to me. The concept was cool. I like the whole kind of black and white the way they shot it. I think it was interesting how I kind of was like the whole monster, the werewolf thing's always like interesting to me, but I think there was just a little more in the Phase 4 that I liked kind of more than this, but it was a pretty solid movie overall. I know Dylan was talking about like the kind of tiers here, and I feel like the bottom 6 and 9 are like the low tier, and like 11 probably 6 to mid, and then 5 to 1 is top tier. So it's like right in the middle where I liked it, but there's just more things I liked a little more than this one in Phase 4.
Absolutely. Dylan, what'd you think of Werewolf?
Yeah, this is my number 9. It's smack dab in the middle. I've only seen this one once. It's the only one I've only watched once. Because it's one of those things where I think if you've seen it, you get it, you like it. But I personally don't need to like see it again because it doesn't like. There's not a lot of like deep ins and outs that you can like further explore with each viewing. It's kind of like just a fun throwback horror in the lens of the MCU. It was just a really cool experiment. I really enjoyed it. There's not really much else I can say. Harriet Sampson Harris, who Chad and I love from Licorice Pizza, she's my favorite part of Licorice Pizza. Playing the villain in here, she gets a really.
Is that who that was?
Yeah. She's like the one who's like the agent in Licorice Pizza, has like 2-minute scene. She's so good, and she's so versatile in her performances. And Gael Garcia Bernal is so good in this as well. A Pickle Award nominee for this film. Like I really do dig the performances here. I just think everyone's really committed to making this what it is. It's very unique, and I think that's why sometimes I struggle to put it higher because it is so different. But I put it higher because it is so different, and I really do like that. I really enjoy it. It's a fun treat for those who love like that universal classic horror stuff. So. I have to get a quick. I have to go to the bathroom real quick, so I'll be right back. But
yeah. Werewolf by Night for me, it's like right dab in the middle. It's at number 8, I think this one, like Dylan said, is a really good like experiment. It's really cool because it's like the directorial debut of Michael Giacchino. Who's like a great composer. So I think he did a great job here. just kind of like harkening back to a lot of the old classic monster movies. And I feel like that's just like really incredible thing that he was able to achieve there. It was creepy. It was fun. I liked it the second time I watched it, because I did watch this one twice, because it's so short. You could just like throw it on and check it out real quick. Maybe even while you're doing other things. Yeah, I like the character, like the werewolf, and how like you had the storyline with the one woman, and then she wanted that amulet thing, so she wanted to be kind of like rid of her family, and then like he didn't want the amulet, and he just wanted to make sure his friend was safe or whatever, the monster. And I think it was cool they kind of like teamed up, because they wanted different things, and they had to like have a whole conversation to feel like if they could trust each other and stuff like that. So there's a lot of really cool like character moments and dialogue and stuff. And then when he said her name, the lady from Licorice Pizza, she like just went off like towards the end there. Just incredible when she does that. And so I understand why Dylan loves her so much. Because she really is one of those great like character actors that just like delivers. This one is a really fun one. It's a little bit outside of my top 5, but yeah, I just thought it was so unique and really cool. Just
Where do you have this, Chad?
8. Their specials are just like really cool, so I'm just excited to keep seeing if they do like more unique specials like that, like 40 minutes, like not a movie but kind of a movie. So we're going on to 8 now. And are we starting with Dylan or me?
Wait, did Kerri talk about Werewolf by Night?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
I was about to be like, wait, we're missing something.
Werewolf by Night, Kerri.
Yeah. Oh shoot. Sorry. I really enjoyed this. This was my number 7, so I just had it slightly higher. It's just a really cool like kind of take on a classic monster movie. Like Chad said, it was cool to see Michael Giacchino directing something, because he's a composer. And I don't know, I thought it came together really cool. It's just like a really fun story, like a fun kind of horror thing to put on. And it was cool to see like Gael Garcia Bernal. I've only seen him in a limited number of stuff, but I know he's like supposed to be an amazing, incredible actor. And I was glad to like see him do that in this, and get a taste for it, because the last movie I saw him in was Old, which I don't think on his.
We'll get
his
there
fault.
when we do our M. Night Shyamalan ranking. Coming to you soon.
Like for me, that was kind of like a Marky Mark situation.
And he was in Coco.
He's great in Coco. But so it was nice to see him, act in something live action that was good. And yeah, overall, just I think this was a really cool, fun little special.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to our 8s. Dylan, you can start with the 8.
Yep, my 8 is the newest one, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Wait for it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, wait for it.
And mine is Werewolf by Night, my 8. Kerri, what is your 8?
My 8, we talked about Black Widow.
All right. James, what is your 8?
I had Moon Knight.
Okay, so we can talk about Moon Knight now, because that's come up a couple
Chad,
times.
sorry, what did you say was your 8?
My 8's Werewolf by Night.
Okay, so it's just okay. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, we can talk about Midnight.
Okay, I don't know where the hell we are. James, talk Moon Knight.
All right. So Moon Knight, I kind of liked this show. I thought it was one of the more interesting ones that Marvel did for this phase. I like the whole like Egyptian mythology thing. So when they kind of touch upon that, that's always really interesting to me. I think Oscar Isaac is like a really good actor. I think he did a great job in this one. I liked the story overall. It kept me interested for the most part. This was one of the ones that was like easier to get through. I think Moon Knight was a pretty cool series.
Absolutely. Dylan, Moon Knight.
Yeah, I had this right outside my top 5. I had it at number 6. This show just hit all the right notes for me. It was entertaining. It was energized. Every episode had me wanting the next one. This could be that hashtag should have been a movie, because like I don't necessarily know if we needed it elongated into a bunch of episodes. It could have just been a 2.5-hour movie. But what I love so much about this is we are experiencing Revelations the same time this character is, which I really like. We're never one step ahead of him. We're also not one step behind him. We're with him the whole time. To where that first episode, rewatching it now, knowing where, what his deal is so interesting. But at the time, I remember just being so confused. But then at the end, when everything clicked and that it was these two different personalities, it was like, oh, it was such a cool moment. And luckily, unlike Miss Marvel, I think it followed up the premiere very well. It kept getting better for me. There's had amazing emotional episode, penultimate episode where they go into his past is so beautiful. For me, though, the reason why it's so high, though, is Oscar Isaac. I think Michael B. Jordan was always my favorite performance in the MCU with Black Panther until this. I think this is going to be a performance that is going to be very rarely topped when it comes to Marvel performances. I genuinely believe this is the best performance Marvel will get out of probably anyone. I think it's amazing, and I think his versatility is great. It's at a point where people who don't know Oscar Isaac are asking, is he British? Is he really British? Is he not? And he's not, and that's what's so amazing. I really do love him, and I think he's so good in this show. Yeah, there are maybe a few episodes that aren't as much of a standout, but I think it starts strong and ends strong, and I think that's all I really want from a show, is to start on a high where I want to keep watching more and then end on a high where I want more of the character. And this just ticked all the right boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of great points. Where did you have that, Dylan?
6.
That's exactly where I had it too. And where starting at 6 and up to all the way to my 1 are ones that I love. Moon Knight, I really liked the first time, but I really loved it the second time watching through it. And I was watching through it a second time for this, but also because I was doing a debate and Dylan was helping with that. Dylan saying that maybe it should have been a movie. I argued against that in my debate, and I think that helped structure a lot of how I felt about this movie, show, because I think the way it's structured for me really super works, because it's very like his identity and his mental state is very fractured, and I feel like that helps with having like a sort of a segmented show. You can get a lot of those kind of twists of like, oh, he's not British, or oh, he's a different personality, and then at the ends we get like the other like big personality and stuff like that. Are you judging me or are you stretching?
I'm stretching.
And
I'm
and so
sorry.
you get a lot of really great stuff with that. You get a lot of great stuff with like his wife, is a wife, or they're married, right? And they're trying to get a divorce.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to have an arc where she becomes like heroic, and it gets her own god or whatever, and deity. And then you get a lot of really great Islamic representation there, just like in Miss Marvel. I just think this show works so much better than that one. And I just like, I think like every single episode, like Ethan Hawke is a really cool villain in it. And it's just like really, it keeps your attention the entire way through. It doesn't feel like it's trying to do too much for me. And it feels like they actually just really work through his whole, like developing his like psyche in both aspects. And the strength, like Dylan said, is the acting, the performance. Oscar Isaac's incredible in pretty much everything he does. And I think in this, he's just so good at playing both. And so much so when, is it Steven who's the one who's like kind of like in the sand and freezing or whatever?
Yeah, Steven's the one who goes overboard.
When he goes overboard and stuff, and you're like, no, it's like it really works like so deep that you care about both of these psyches, even though like one's not real, but he's real. So it's kind of a thing. And there is one, like, I'm not going to explain what it is, but there is one Buffy thing that happens in this show that I don't know if it's a comic thing or if they saw Buffy and then they were like, I'm going to do this Buffy thing that happens in this one episode in Moon Knight. And Kerri knows what I'm talking about. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I really adored this one. Great show. Kerri, what do you think about Moon Knight?
Yeah, I had this a little bit lower. I had this at number 12, and I'll start out with kind of what made it a little lower for me. I think that was mostly I didn't so much enjoy the villain, especially like Ethan Hawke. Like overall, I think the villain story ultimately paid off because it gets Mark and Steven kind of where they need to be to like have this development and growth. But and I don't think it was anything really with Ethan Hawke's acting. I don't know. It's just something about the character. Maybe it's just I hated him so much, and that's like you're supposed to.
Yeah.
But I think otherwise, this show was absolutely incredible. Like it's structured so cleverly to get us to, I think, love both Steven and Mark and like get their backstory. And I think from what I had read, the comics are really structured kind of the opposite. Like you're primarily with Mark, and Steven's kind of like this person who just kind of like interrupts and gets in the way. And I think to start the and that could be wrong. That article I read could be totally wrong because I haven't read the comics. But I think to start the show with Steven and kind of have to work backwards in this mystery was really, really clever. And I love otherwise I love the characters in this. Obviously Oscar Isaac, like doing an amazing job. I love Layla and like how she turns into Scarlet Scarab. I love the hippo. Like I think it's all fantastic. Yeah, overall, I mean, just an amazing show.
And that's why I like the show stuff, because you get that one incredible cliffhanger with the hi, kind of hippo thing. And you're like, what is going on?
Madagascar?
And I like that there were subtle hints dropped. I guess I won't spoil them, but there were subtle hints like dropped in the show that wound up like foreshadowed things and wound up paying off at the very, very, very end. And I was like, oh, I caught on, and like that's so great. And I'm glad they actually like paid off, and it was just very cleverly done, I think.
Yeah, and I love like the cliffhanger that you're talking about of the very final episode.
Yeah.
I love how they revealed that, and then they're like, "Oh, you thought that things were crazy before." I'm like, "Oh my god, what's gonna happen? This is insane!" So cool. James, did you talk about this one yet?
Yeah, I think I started.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that's the first time I did that this episode. So now we're going on to sevens, correct?
Yeah.
Dylan, 7.
My 7 is Shang-Chi.
Top 5.
top 5.
Chad, 7. Wakanda Forever.
Top 5.
Top 5, right. Kerri, 7.
Sorry. My 7 was Werewolf by Night.
All right. James, 7.
We talked about mine. That was Miss Marvel.
All right, nice. Okay, so now we're going on to 6s.
Yeah, everything else is. We'll wait for it. So.
Let's do it around to 6s, and then we can start talking about everything that like has been mentioned and stuff like that in our top 5s. Right?
Yeah, if the 6s are
all right. Yeah, we'll play by ear. My 6 was Moon Knight. Kerri?
My 6 was Thor: Love and Thunder.
Okay. James, 6?
I had the Guardians holiday special at 6.
That's top 5. Dylan, 6.
Also Moon Knight.
All right. Okay, so I don't think that adds anything, does it?
No.
All right. So do we want to? Let's just go to the top 5s, and then that'll give us the next thing to talk about. Kerri, top your 5.
My 5 was Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
All right. James, 5.
I had Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi. Dylan, 5.
My 5 was Spider-Man: No Way Home.
All right, nice. And my 5 was also Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings. So I think we should talk Shang-Chi now.
Yeah, everyone
and then Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
All right, Shang-Chi. Dylan, go ahead and with Shang-Chi, please.
Yeah, I had this at 7, so like very close to the top 5. I think this is really solid. I think the action's a lot of fun. I think there's some great set pieces. The bus fight, the scaffolding fight, the stuff, the martial arts in the gardens and the colors. I like how it kind of introduces this fantastical element to the MCU of like the giant, like I call them the Pokemon, like the big beasts and dragons and all these cool creatures. Bringing Trevor Slattery back. Like I think it all worked up till the very last 30 minutes. Like I think it was very solid filmmaking. The 30 minutes is where it loses me, only because I've kind of talked about the visuals, and I think this one they resort to the whole, oh, now it's just going to get cloudy all of a sudden when it was perfectly sunny 10 seconds before. I wish there was more daylit sequences in Marvel movies. I feel like they tend to just kind of cover things in a bluish gray aesthetic that I don't love, but I don't think that takes away from it too much for me. I still think I enjoy the whole. I enjoy all the performances. It's great seeing all the actors. Like Simu Liu, who's like on the rise, Stephanie Hsu, who's on the rise, Aquafina, who's on the rise. But then veterans like Michelle Yeoh and Ben Kingsley. Like you got a lot of great up and comers and great veterans in this movie, and just great Asian representation. I think it's a really, really great. Just a really great product. I just keep saying great because I have very little to critique except for some of the aesthetic choices in the third act. But even then, I think the character creature designs of the dragons and the Pokemon are so cool that like I'm able to forgive the aesthetic of the color palette, I guess. So yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, Shang-Chi is top 5. Like when you get here, like I'm still a little bit mixed on Wakanda Forever. I know we'll get to Wakanda Forever. I think that's where it starts for me in my movie ranking. If you strip out everything else and just the movies, that's when it starts to get kind of fantastic, even though that one I'm still a little bit mixed on overall. But I think Shang-Chi for me in my top 5, all the movies in there, is where it just starts getting fantastic. And Shang-Chi, I just think there's like really no issues with it. I know Dylan has his one thing, and a lot of people might have an issue with that as well, because I don't think Dylan's incorrect. But it's just, for me, it's just one thing. When I watched it, I didn't really notice it until Dylan said something, and now maybe if I rewatched it, I might go like, okay, maybe a little bit, but it still doesn't really bother me. But everything else in the movie, I just think is so incredible. Like the humor works really well, doesn't overshadow anything. Like in Love and Thunder, I'll admit there's certain parts, like when the one with Lady Sif or whatever, who's dying, and then I'm like, why can't you just at least let that one be a little bit serious? You have to go, actually, the battle was forever ago. You're actually just gonna die now. Just like kind of dumb. But like in this, all the humor's fantastic. Aquafina, and she hasn't worked. Aquafina, her humor hasn't worked for me in every single thing, but in this, I think it's incredible. She has that like great like comedic relief vibe to her, but then she also has her own like story and arc and stuff like that. And Shang-Chi has all this stuff. It does have like a great vibe to it, like especially when you have like the fight sequence and stuff with the parents, and that's kind of like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like was the House of the Flying Daggers type of vibe to it, which is pretty incredible. And then all of the kind of like Jackie Chan-esque fighting, like on the bus and stuff like that just, and then on the like scaffolding outside the building, and just like all this incredible action, mixed with the drama, mixed with the kind of like doing Trevor Slattery a justice, where it kind of strengthens other movies like Iron Man 3 and stuff like that. So like Shang-Chi, I think, is just really incredible, really fun watch, really deep watch. Just like, yeah, God, it's such a good movie that I really, really, really dug. And I was just like, wow, MCU still has it when I saw that. And then I think it dipped in quality a little bit, like the Phase 4, as like the movies went on a little bit. But I think Wakanda Forever was still pretty strong. So I'm excited for the future. Guardians 3 is one of my most anticipated of this year. So I'm very excited But Shang-Chi is fantastic. What do you think?
Yeah. I had this at number 11, so I had this a little bit lower than everyone. I don't really have anything bad to say about it, though. It's a really incredible movie. The fight scenes are just phenomenal. Like some of the best, I think. Definitely in this phase and like throughout Marvel. And it was cool to get like just different cultural stuff in this movie. And the acting was phenomenal. I don't know, like thinking about it, why I have this ranked as lowly as I do. I guess because I just kind of ultimately preferred some of the other stuff. But yeah, I don't have anything like bad to say about it. It's a really great movie.
Perfect. James, what do you think?
Yeah, this was definitely a solid 5. I liked a lot about this movie. Maybe I'm a little biased because I love Simu Liu and Convenience, so having watched that comedy show before kind of I was going to go see this movie anyway when I saw he was in it. So I was like, you know what? I'm there. It doesn't matter. But I thought like the effects were still good enough. Like maybe it's where they kind of start to teeter off in like quality, but I think still solid enough overall. I like the fight sequences, even though the end true was a little bit comic booky, like you said, Dylan, a little blue and gray washed over, but I thought it was still pretty solid. It was. I liked all the performances. Like the acting was really good. I liked the dialogue. The conversations were all really cool in this one. It was definitely good.
Yeah, and Kim's Convenience is a fantastic show. Check it out. Dylan, wait, we already talked. You already talked.
I can talk about it more if you'd like.
That's all right. So now let's go through our fours.
No, Black Panther we can do. No.
We'll talk about Black Panther. Okay, I'll start with Black Panther, or Wakanda Forever. This one, I'm still a little mixed on. Like the first time I watched it, I wasn't like, so I was like really, really hyped to go in, and I wouldn't say that I was disappointed. I was just really mixed. And I do have like a thing like when I watched this movie, like halfway through, my arm started hurting really bad. I had to go to the emergency room. So I didn't have the best of first watches with this one, but as soon as I saw it on Disney Plus, I liked it even more. And like I said, it's not that I disliked it. I liked it, but I really liked it the second time. And who knows, maybe the third time I'll love it. I don't know, but I think it is very, very strong. I think they did the best that they could do, considering great name, Chadwick Boseman's sad passing. I think that the way they structured everything around that was pretty incredible. Sorry, cat fight. Pretty incredible. And a lot of the performances that are being lauded, especially Angela Bassett, and then you got what's her name, Letitia Wright. Is that her name? I think just are so incredible. I like the stuff with the water people. I thought like that was a pretty incredible like horror moment when they started to come out of the water and then attack the ship and stuff like that and do the siren type of stuff, which I thought was like really cool. And the way they talked about like the people kind of like, how they started to just morph into this other type of people. And then I also loved how like strong Wakanda was and Angela Bassett coming in and going, we're leading and, stuff like that. I just thought like a lot of that was really strong, especially being a sequel of the first movie that was really strong with all of that as well. I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot more. I know a lot of people talk about like, Martin Freeman and his character not really being necessary, but I'm also just kind of like, well, there's a little bit of espionage. There's like warring between nations. So it kind of makes sense that he's there a little bit, but I don't know if every single aspect of this movie works, but I still think it's a really good movie. I still think Angela Bassett is winning that Oscar, and we'll see. You never know. I mean, things have been shaken up a little bit now. So, Kerri, what did you think about Wakanda Forever?
Yeah, this was my number 5. I really, really love this movie. I don't know. I love that it was.
I had it at 7, by the way.
Oh yeah. Female driven. Unfortunately, a large part of that is because Chadwick Boseman passed away. He obviously would have continued to be Black Panther if he hadn't passed away. But I do really love Shuri in this. I love Okoye.
She was my favorite part, I think, Okoye. Oh my God, like the whole arc with her and
yeah.
so good.
And Angela Bassett and Lupita Nyong'o and Winston Duke, just all really fantastic in this movie. I loved their character development, especially Shuri's character development. And Riri, we got a new character.
Yeah, she was great.
And yeah, I thought the water people, I think it was cool. I liked how things ended in the end. I liked that they continued the tradition with this Black Panther movie of the villain, not being completely one-sided. You can see where he's coming from. They ultimately, they kind of leave it open for the future for conflict, but you can see they kind of resolve things without, absolutely decimating each other, I guess, at the end.
Yeah.
They still cause a lot of violence to each other. and I think this movie just had so much heart.
Yeah.
And especially in Letitia Wright and Angela Bassett's acting, I just really felt for them. Like, I felt for their characters, felt for, I think, them as actors as well. Just like losing Chadwick Boseman in real life. So I think I definitely like cried a couple times in this movie.
Yeah.
But overall, just really cool.
Yeah, and spoiler alert for Wakanda Forever, like the end stuff I think is really strong. Like when she finally takes the mantle of Black Panther, I think is really cool because you were always wondering what's going to happen with this, who's going to be. It's her, and then like the sequence with her and Michael B. Jordan, I think was really cool.
Oh yeah.
But then also like the cheerworthy moment of the kid revealing what his actual name is, and you're like, oh shit. So there's a lot of really great moments in the movie. I actually kind of want to watch it again now. James, what did you think of Wakanda Forever? You have this ranked highly.
Yeah, this is number one. This is my favorite.
Whoa,
Phase Four.
nice.
Oh yeah, I think of all like when I made this list, there were a few contenders, but this one is just put itself at the top. Really, I think I would just piggyback on pretty much everything like Kerri said. Like, there's just so much positive to look at this movie. The performances, like the set designs, the costumes. I liked the water people. I liked them more. I liked the civilization where they lived. I thought that's kind of an interesting perspective. It's kind of weird because the movie came out the month before
Avatar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, what are we going to get in this movie though? Because the trailers were airing at the same time on TVs and commercials and shit like that. So I was like, what's actually going to be like is one thing copying the other one? Like, I know Cameron has idea however long ago, but then when it didn't turn out to be just straight up blue people, I was like, all right, no, this is pretty cool. Now I can get behind this. So I think that kind of helped it along too. Also, I went to see this in Screen X at the Regal Theater. I don't know if you guys know what Screen X is, but it's the screen in front of you, and then the walls are the screens too.
What?
So it puts some of it works well for like the landscape and like the large kind of wide screen panel shots. But the problem is that the theater doesn't angle. It's a 90-degree angle between the screens, so you feel like you're in a shoebox. And if you're sitting too far up, you can't see what's behind you because the whole screen, all the walls are the screen. So
that's interesting.
It was cool in Screen X. I went to see it because it didn't sell as many tickets. And I didn't have to deal with as many people in the theater. So I'll pay the extra money and not have to deal with people. But it was cool enough there too. So I think I liked how they handled passing of Chadwick Boseman. I liked the tribute to all that. I like how they did that completely. This was definitely number one. I liked this movie the most of Phase 4.
Yeah, like I said, you got to cheer for number ones. I love that you love that movie so much. It's really great. And I didn't know Regal had that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's Regal that's right by us too. So I gotta go
is
check.
it the one in Laurel?
It's the one, no, that one doesn't have the Screen X. It's the one behind the Home Depot in Columbia.
Behind the Home Depot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, the United Artists?
That's what it used to be. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Dylan, Wakanda Forever.
I saw this in regular 2D AMC. No, I put this in number 8. I just rewatched it actually a few nights ago for the first time rewatch. I like it more on rewatch. I think the first time it was just that kind of impossible task of having to make a movie and then have this curveball thrown. And I like how they didn't try to make him a CGI person and get him killed off that way or recast it. Instead, they just kind of made it what it was, and that was he died of an illness, and then everyone's grieving him, and I think that's sad. It's hard to make a movie with that curveball thrown, and I think they did the best they could. I was in the camp of the Martin Freeman thing, and then when I rewatched it, I was like, oh, I see more of a purpose for his character. I think kind of James alluded to it, having Avatar come out right afterward kind of did it a disservice because I think the underwater stuff pales in comparison visually. I think I'm a big thing. A lot of my focus on this list is aesthetic and visuals, and I just in the theater I could barely see what was going on in those underwater scenes. So watching it on TV, it was a little clearer because I could turn up the brightness on my TV. But again, you shouldn't have to turn up the brightness on your TV to see what's going on. But that aside, I think it's a really good story for what they had to deal with. I still think it feels a little overstuffed because it's very clear that Ryan Coogler wanted to tell a specific story, but then had to include other stuff because of real life stuff. And you can kind of see where the two lines blur a little bit. And like just thinking about how I think it was always going to be, there's another character death in this film that it feels like, do we really need to kill off another person when like the whole movie was devoted to the death of another person, to where when we cycle back around to Chadwick's death at the end, it's like we almost kind of forget that another big character died in this one, where almost they should have almost kept that character alive for one more movie. But that's probably what was intended in the original script. You know, it's a very tricky tightrope to walk, and I want to know more. I want to pick Ryan Coogler's brain, not personally, like I'll probably read it somewhere. I'll probably never get the chance to talk to him, but I'd love to know like what the original intention for the story was and how much was kept and how much was changed, because I think he seamlessly kind of, blurs the lines well. Like I think the final product is more successful than I think any other director would have been able to produce with all the stuff going on in the world. I do love Okoye storyline too, except I totally agree with her that suit is ugly as hell. I wish they didn't put them in suits. Like why everyone has to have a super suit, I don't know. I talked about it with Thor: Love and Thunder. Not everything needs to be the CGI mask or the CGI suit. But I also like the introduction of Ironheart, like we talked about, like the idea that all these spin-offs, like Thor, we didn't get one with Jane Foster, but Hawkeye has a new Hawkeye. There's like a new Black Widow with Yelena. There's a new who am I missing? A new Captain America, and now there's a new Iron Man, and it's Riri Williams as Ironheart. And I like that moment where she like kind of cuts the metal heart and it falls to the ground. Chad, you're lucky because you didn't have some stuff spoiled for you as to who the Black Panther was. The second trailer spoiled it was Shuri, so that was another thing where I'm just like, why, Marvel, why? And we'll talk about it when we get to No Way Home, because that's a big thing with some of it too. Some problems I have with that movie as well is just it gives away too much, and I like when they keep some stuff surprises. But again, it's a really good movie, really solid, especially given what they had to go through. It's just, I want to watch it a few more times to fully see where I stand. But again, I think it's very successful at what it does, and I think Angela Bassett is great. Chad, we'll talk more about if she's going to win an Oscar or not on Picture This. Well, I guess it'll be after the fact, so will have already happened or not happened. But I'm starting to worry that she's Sylvester Stallone in Creed, where the whole season it's like, oh, he's finally going to win his Oscar for Creed, and then he loses the SAG and the BAFTA to Mark Rylance, and then Mark Rylance goes on to win the Oscar. That's where I'm feeling right now. But I like Kerri Condon, who's also a Marvel actress, so I couldn't complain.
I'd be so down with her. She was great. Did you have something to say, Kerri?
I thought, and maybe it was just speculation and I took it as fact, but I thought they had released that Shuri was going to be Black Panther like years ago.
I thought it was speculation. Like people are like, she does in the comics kind of a deal. And then
I forgot about that. But then the second trailer, you see the shot of her coming down and they don't show her face, but you see her body. And it's like, just based on the body type, like no one's that small and petite, so.
Yeah, I just remember them always talking about like when as soon as Chadwick Boseman passed away, people were like, he should be recast. And I was like, what the? That's so disrespectful. Why would you recast him? Just like have something else happen that makes sense. And I think they took the best approach with this. One thing I wanted to say, that United Artists Theater behind the Home Depot, I saw the Winter Soldier there. I saw Shrek there. I saw Mystery Men there. I've been going to that theater since Dylan was born. Moving on. So we'll go.
I thought there was an extra added part to that. No,
that's it. So we're going to threes.
No, we're going to fours.
Oh, fours. Okay, that's right. Kerri, 4.
My number 4 is Doctor Strange.
My number 4, or James, 4.
I had a Spider-Man No Way Home at 4.
All right, Dylan, 4.
My 4 was Loki season 1.
Okay, my 4 was WandaVision. Okay, so is there something we could talk about now?
I would say I would do first Doctor Strange, then Loki, then No Way Home.
All right, so Doctor Strange, Kerri, you can start with Doctor Strange.
Okay. This is my number 4. Was obviously really excited going into this because I'm a big Sam Raimi fan. And Doctor Strange, isn't my favorite, MCU character. So, but I was excited to see what Sam Raimi would do because I know the Doctor Strange comics can get into horror territory. So I was excited to kind of see a little bit more horror. And I know that Scott Derrickson actually had planned to make this, I think, even more horror, which I think would have been really cool to see. It's a little unfortunate we didn't, but I still really loved it. I loved all of the goofy stuff that Sam Raimi threw in. I loved having, we get our Bruce Campbell cameo.
Pizza Pop always gets saved.
Yeah, that was amazing. I really liked Doctor Strange's kind of growth in this movie. I think in the first movie he's like he grows, but he's still kind of unlikable. I think in this movie, especially contrasting him with his self in the other universes, he comes off as just having like experienced and learned a lot more and a lot more compassionate. I love America Chavez. I'm so glad we get her in the MCU, and I'm really hoping and excited to see more of her. I love Scarlet Witch. I didn't really care that they just like made her the villain. I thought her villain arc was pretty good. Especially at the end. I just love Sam Raimi's style. I think that did a lot for me. I love Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch. I thought the whole, we get the whole cameo alternate universe portion of the movie, which I thought was really cool. I don't know, but I know there are criticisms of it. Yeah.
James, what did you think about Doctor Strange 2?
So I had this one at number 9. It was a little bit farther down, like mid-tier range. It was good. I was entertained by it for what it was. I know they kind of like said it was gonna be Marvel's first horror movie, but like I don't know like how many parts of it like were scary, or like not that like horror is certainly subjective to the viewer. Some people might have thought it was, others wasn't, but like I don't know how much of it was supposed to be scary. Like I think I saw some horror movie kind of like throw like nods, like you kind of like the poltergeist thing when they're in the house, the staircase kind of. You get it's the ring kind of when it's Professor X and one of his in his vision and she reaches out and grabs him. Like that was one little bit, like when she's walking through the halls killing off Reed Richards and Captain Britain and whoever. She's got the blood on her face, kind of like in Kerri. Like I think there were some like callbacks to some horror movies, but I don't know like how much of it was actually scary, which may have taken it away because like I went in there like assuming it would be a horror movie, but I guess like the ghouls flying around in the end might have been a horror bit. So those like rock monster things, which didn't really do that much, could have been like a horror bit. I thought like, or maybe they would have had Scarlet Witch be a little more terrifying. Like she had some like decrepit face on her when she snaps Professor X's neck, but like that's kind of all I saw in like the horror aspect of it. And like the zombie Strange wasn't horrifying. Like I mean, I guess the music battle was like kind of cool. I think it suffers from the whole overworked, underpaid VFX folks, but like it worked well enough for me. Like it was kind of cool. Let me think what else. I did like the bits with John Krasinski as Reed Richards. I like Black Bolt. I liked Professor X. I like all those bits. There's always something, like I say, in the movies that kind of keeps me watching. But I didn't think it was all that great overall. There's something else I had to say though. I can't remember what that is right now. There was something about how the movie wasn't that great at the same time. Oh yeah, I hadn't seen I hadn't seen WandaVision prior to this, so I didn't know what the hell Westview was at the time. So I was like, all right, whatever that is, I guess maybe it's an inside joke or something, but I don't know. So after seeing it I understood it, but it didn't. I got that reference. I understood that reference. So yeah, that's kind of why like Doctor Strange wasn't really that great to me. I just didn't. I was expecting horror, and I guess I didn't really get that much of it. And at the end, like as along the lines of the whole underpaid VFX. There was a comment somewhere I read that third eye that he has on his forehead looked like the eyes on the annoying orange. So that was kind of funny to me to kind of see that, have someone kind of make a joke about that, like as far as the VFX not looking that great. And then like, so now we have third eye Doctor Strange now running around, I guess, in the MCU. That's what I got from the end of it. But like, did he like get replaced by that, or is that him still? So I guess maybe we'll have to figure out later on in the oh yeah, and in the beginning when she's attacking the temple, when she's like attacking Hogwarts or whatever, and she's using like the puddles to kind of like, you know, move around. Like that was kind of cool. I like that little bit. Maybe it was a little bit of a horror-ish spin on it too, but I guess maybe the horror just didn't really do it for me.
Perfect. All right, Dylan, what did you think?
Yeah, I had this lower at 13, but I do like it every time I watch it more than I did the last. I think visually it's actually one of my favorites of the MCU in terms of the directorial stamp. I think Sam Raimi has a unique style that's so cool to see, and I like how he kind of recognized that the visual effects weren't always up to par, so we did a lot of practical stuff. Like the zombie makeup is actual makeup, it's not CGI, which I love. It just makes it seem like you can do more because the actor Benedict Cumberbatch can actually like make these faces and expressions and they feel authentic because it's makeup, not CGI. But then again, there is still a lot of like very clearly like, you know, a lot of it looks fake CGI. You know, it's not as convincing. But the only thing about Multiverse of Madness that really holds me back, the Wanda stuff, I've kind of grown a little bit more to like be a little bit more comfortable with that arc. It's more so that it's called Multiverse of Madness, and while the visuals, a lot of crazy stuff happens, the actual madness of the multiverse is, I wish there was a little bit more playfulness in exploring other universes. I feel like we get that like 30-second shot of them going through those different universes and then they stick at one and then they're kind of there for most of the movie, you know, with the Illuminati and all that stuff, and then they finally go back. It's like they only kind of really go to 3 universes firmly, and I wish they had just kind of played around with that a little bit more, even if it's like a 5-minute sequence of them going through all these places. I think of, you know, it's hard not to compare, but Everything Everywhere All at Once, you have so many different multiverses you're getting, and this one, it felt like you have so much bigger of a budget, yet we're exploring way less ground. I wish there was a little bit more real estate for the multiverseness. You know, this is the opportunity to show off the different worlds. And I'm not the biggest fan of just throwing in a cameo for cameo's sake, but like I would have loved to see what, you know, Tony Stark in this universe looks like, or Captain America in this one, even if it's a short little montage. You know, I would have loved to see more actual multiversal madness. It feels just like Doctor Strange and the parallel universe of madness, because it's really just one other universe. We're not getting a million different ones. That being said, I still like the character development. I think, kind of like Chad was saying, the hashtag should have been a movie. My hashtag for the day is main character is not as interesting as the supporting ones. It's the Black Widow thing. It's the what else did I say for that one? I forget what else I mentioned. I don't know. But it's a Black Widow thing where I think, Hawkeye. It's like the main character is not as interesting as the surroundings. I think Benedict Cumberbatch is good, but Doctor Strange himself, his arc, I'm more interested in Wanda. I'm more interested in America. I'm even more interested in Wong, because like I love the stuff with Wong in this movie. So I wish there was a little bit more Doctor Strange, because I don't think they developed his relationship well with Christine in the first one, to where I didn't really care about the relationship in this one. And, you know, I wish I had. But again, I think Sam Raimi is the reason this movie works so well. And I think I would have loved to see Scott Derrickson's version, but because they fired him, it allowed him to make The Black Phone. So I'm kind of grateful because I love that movie. Because he wouldn't have made that movie if he had to do this one, or he may have made it later, but you never know. It stars wouldn't have aligned the same way. But I do wish we could have gotten a little bit darker, scarier. But again, it's a Marvel movie, so they're not going to fully commit to doing full on horror. You know, this is, I think, the most they're going to push the boundaries. But I did like it. I think it's getting better every time I watch it, so I'm excited to watch it even more.
Great. That probably wasn't a Beatles reference, but it kind of sounded like when getting better all the time. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I hear the criticisms every time. Ever since this movie came out, I've heard so many just criticisms, people wanting to hate on it so much, and I think the criticisms that I've heard since this movie came out, me actually loving this is my number 3. Me loving this movie so much, because I'm such a big Sam Raimi fan, it felt like it did, for me, a disservice to 2 films, this and Everything Everywhere. Because as soon as, like, you know, Everything Everywhere started to make that wave of being like, oh, it's everyone's favorite movie, people took that movie to use that as a way to shit on this movie. And like the conversation around this movie for me has never really been about this movie. It's been about this other movie so great. Why watch that movie? That Marvel's terrible now. Phase 4 is terrible, and this is the reason why. And I'm like, look, to me, Sam Raimi made a fantastic movie here that I really, really enjoyed, because it's one of those where I watch, even when I watch Scream 5, and I don't love that movie, but when I watch that, it's like one of those things where I'm like, I'm a Scream fan, so like all of the little things that happen that I go, I was waiting for that to happen. That's the same thing with this movie. And as soon as like that zombie Strange came out, Kerri and I were like, "Oh my
Oh yeah,
god,
it's the best. It's the best. I love it.
this is insane! It's so cool!" And just like him having like all the chaos around him, and then not I almost said Jane Foster, Rachel McAdams, who's like, use it, use that energy, and then he's like, start using, makes a cape out of it. I don't know. I just thought all of those sequences and stuff were really fantastic, and I also just love that. But yeah, the horror actually really worked for me, because Sam Raimi has always been not like this, like it's the scariest thing you've ever seen. There's always this kind of like campy weirdness to his horror. It's same with Drag Me to Hell. Drag Me to Hell is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, but it's also silly as hell. And he's able to blend those two styles together to be a Sam Raimi movie. I don't know. And it's just like that works for me. And you can tell. I said I had WandaVision at 4. I have Doctor Strange 2 at 3. Anything like with Wanda in Phase 4, it just works for me for some reason. I love her villain turn. I know some people might not love that they turned her into a villain immediately or whatever. I know maybe like one might have been supposed to come out first and the other came out. I don't know. That whole thing, I don't really super care. It all worked for me. I thought she was really crazy and brutal, like the arm coming out, like her killing all the people. And she just seemed so menacing, which I know in the comics, I think she is kind of menacing at certain parts. But then like her arc where she changes and she realizes what she's actually doing to those kids that she loves is terrible. And I just love how she learns that. I love the America stuff. I'm excited to see like her grow throughout, see if she can find her moms again. And maybe they'll end up exploring more, because I think that is a super valid criticism. I just don't like when it's weaponized. And I think a lot of that has been like that. And that is not the fault of anybody who has legitimate criticism. It's just like when they use a movie that they love to trash other movies, I think is just really terrible to do. So that's like one big thing that has shaped my view. It's why I'm so defensive about Doctor Strange, why I ranked it so highly, is because I just really think it deserves to be defended, where a lot of people are just like really negative on it. And I just don't think it's really fair, because I think it's a very well crafted movie. Could it have been better? Maybe. But I really like that movie, and sorry for my long rant here.
No, it's good. I mean, you love it, and I do like it. I just don't want everyone to think I'm trashing on it.
No.
I do like it.
I never meant to say that you were, and I'm also being very unfair with my rant, because I do like Everything Everywhere as well, and I can't wait to talk about that on Picture This. So what is next to talk about, Kerri? Loki. All right, and we're starting with James on Loki.
Oh, all right. So I had Loki at number 2. I thought this was like a really, really cool show. I liked it picks up at the end of Avengers. Like I like Marvel does that kind of stuff. Like that's sometimes how it like all connects together or like continues itself. I think the storyline was cool. I like the whole aesthetic. The whole TVA thing is really interesting. I like how they were trying to find all the variants. Owen Wilson is really good in this. I liked all the performances. I thought the sets were really cool. The story was interesting. I like how it sets up Kang. I mean, I had that kind of spoil for me, but I didn't watch Loki till recently, so whatever. But I like that part of it too. I think a lot of it was written pretty well. I like the dialogue. The story was really good. There's a lot that I appreciated about this. I had this number 2. I think I like Black Widow, but this was definitely a solid show from Marvel, and I think because it was their first one, like it kind of set the bar pretty high for some of the rest of it. But this is, after watching the other ones, this is still definitely top of the TV show list.
Perfect. All right, Dylan, Loki.
Yeah, this was my number 4. I love this one. I think stylistically, it's one of the coolest looking ones. It's up there with Doctor Strange in terms of like unique artistic individuality. But I think it honestly kind of uses the whole like jumping between worlds and dimensions and all that stuff even better than Doctor Strange, just because I think it serves the story better personally. I love just all the sequences where they're like, oh, we have to go to like this one place in time with Vesuvius and the volcano, and then go to this like shopping mart, and then Sylvie, and they always just find ways to create new plot points, but they all feel like they're all still coming together in the same, overarching theme, which is the glorious purpose and Loki as a character. And I just love what they've done with Loki in general. And this is one of the rare times where I'm like, oh, why would you keep bringing people back from the dead? But I really do like Loki back in the MCU. I'm glad they did, even though this isn't the same Loki that died. I love Owen Wilson in this, and I'm famously not the biggest Owen Wilson fan, and I really like him in this. I just think everyone here is really good. It introduces my favorite character of the MCU, Miss Minutes, my mascot. I just really think it's such a strong show, and the music's great. I love the Kang reveal at the end, or the He Who Remains reveal at the end. I love Richard E. Grant as classic Loki, all the different Lokis. I just think this is so fun. Like, I really don't have any flaws except for the fact that it was originally supposed to be a 12-episode show, and then they did half of it and said, you know what, we'll save the rest of it till after Quantumania. So now, like, I feel like we're almost still waiting for the end of it, where like this is very clearly an unfinished story. And I think once season 2 happens, we will have a grander picture. And I think once season 2 happens, I may put Loki as a whole as like my favorite thing in the MCU. Like, I really think I'm just missing that last bit of like what happens now, because we are on such a cliffhanger, but I really do love it. And I love that in season 2 we're getting Ke Huy Quan off his big hot Oscar win, assuming he wins. But I like how he's going to be in this universe as well, because I think this is a type of show where he could like go bonkers, go crazy, have a lot of fun. So I love this show so much. I love it.
Hey, I know everybody's all up on the Key train now because of Everything Everywhere, but I've loved him since Goonies. So
me too.
Haven't we all though?
Right. Yeah. We're talking about Loki right now. Loki, some of the positives, yeah. And I didn't actually know that about you, Dylan, about Owen Wilson. I know you didn't like Midnight in Paris, but that much. But I didn't think you disliked Owen Wilson.
I think it's the Cars thing. I think Cars has just soured me on a lot of people. Yeah.
I've never even like really thought about him in relation to Cars, except for when I'm watching Cars. I just like him.
I feel like he's just kind of like a meme. Like, you kind of make fun of him for his voice. I kind of like how Jennifer Coolidge was always a meme. And then this year we finally realized she's a really good actress. It's one of those things where it's like, you just kind of like the wow. It's like, all right, kind of annoying. But then he's giving.
Never really shaped it for me because I've loved him in like Shanghai Noon and just like all these.
I haven't seen that, so yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, an interesting tidbit. But yeah, I'm glad that you like him more because of the show, because I do think he's pretty excellent in the show. Like the whole character stuff between Loki and Mobius, and then Loki and Sylvie, and then Loki and the other Lokis. There's just a lot of really great character stuff, in between. I agree. I love the music, the score and stuff in the show is like, I think, pretty excellent. There's a lot of like really great stuff in the craft of it that I really enjoyed. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if it is because it's like it feels maybe like half of a show, but like the half that we got is still pretty incredible. Like they take their time, like they spend like a whole episode just like him and Sylvie talking for most of the episode and stuff. So it's like just like really incredible when they do stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of really incredible stuff like building the world of the TVA, and even that's kind of like bullshit, and people are it's like kind of like, you're not actually, you weren't born there, you actually like were from somewhere else, and they I guess gaslighted you, or like did a Men in Black mind wipe on you or something, and stuff. But yeah, it's a really incredible show. This one's at 9, and I don't know, it probably should be higher, but I think Phase 4 is pretty tight. I think at least half of Phase 4 is pretty tight. So yeah, I like Loki a lot. Kerri, did you?
Yeah,
like Loki?
I liked Loki. This was my number 10, so a little bit lower ranked, but I still really, really enjoyed it. I think for me, it's a little lower ranked just because I don't particularly like the Tom Hiddleston Loki as a character.
Oof.
And I know he's like one of the most beloved MCU characters. I've just honestly never gotten it, but
I'll be honest, I'm with you. I didn't get it until Ragnarok. Like Phase 1 and Phase 2, I was like,
well, I did actually really love him in Ragnarok, and I that kind of continued through this. But I think that's the only reason why it's a little bit lower ranked for me. But I think otherwise, and really overall, this was a really incredible show. I loved like you guys said, the Owen Wilson stuff, all the TVA stuff. Sylvie was fantastic.
Miss Minutes.
Seeing all the different Lokis and having them team up was really cool. And I am really excited to see the second season.
Wasn't there a great points? Wasn't there a thing, Dylan, where you talked about like the jump scare with Miss Minutes?
oh yeah, no, that jump scare is terrifying. I mean, because it comes out of nowhere. It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I put it in my Marvel's Movie Mondays intro. Yeah, it's there. It's terrifying.
And yeah, no, I'm excited for season 2. So yeah, that's saying something. All right, Kerri, are we on to something else now?
No Way Home.
No Way Home. All right, and we're starting with who are we starting with? Oh shoot, Dylan.
Yeah. I think I had the slowest of everyone, so it makes sense to start with me. But I put in my top 5. It's my number 5. I think I've talked about with Chad personally, like a lot of my qualms have to do with the fact that this is a film so reliant on its surprises that when you show all the villains in the trailer, I wish we had no idea that Doc Ock or Green Goblin or Electro or Sandman or Lizard were coming into this thing. So where when he shows up, it's like, oh my God, like it would have made me lose my mind. And I know Toby and Andrew wasn't spoiled in the marketing, but even then there was that trailer shot where the Lizard's getting punched in the air and everyone's like, how is he getting punched if nothing's punching him? And then you realize it's a shot they took out Andrew's Spider-Man in that shot. And you know, it's one of those things where everyone had so much speculation going in that the surprises kind of felt like you saw them coming, but they were still really cool. Just this is a great nostalgia fest. The only thing about those surprises is a lot of them are given like the treatment that some like live theater gets, where like if you have a big star in a Broadway show, as soon as they enter the stage, they kind of give it a few seconds so the audience can applaud them. And I think it does that thing where Andrew Garfield comes out of the portal, pulls off his mask, he's standing there breathing for like 4 seconds, and you're just sitting there like, what? And I think when you rewatch it, it gets kind of uncomfortable because it happens like 7 times in this movie, to where I'm like, all right, okay. And I think that's kind of where like I get the theme park criticism where like it's meant to get those cheers out of people and it's supposed to give people this wild ride and hoorah. But then when you rewatch it at home, I think some of those magic moments are lost because you kind of notice those holes. And you know, the idea of just like giving applause breaks, I'm like, wow. It's just jarring to see. But the reason I love No Way Home is not the surprises. It's not Toby and Andrew. It's not the action. I actually think the CGI here is poor, but I like the de-aging on Doc Ock, but I don't like the CGI in the final act. But what I love is the idea that what this film has to say about superheroism in general, and the fact that like it's about saving, not killing. And I love that because so many of these movies, I mean, Endgame ends with Tony Stark snapping and basically killing all of Thanos' army. I know he's trying to like reverse it, but essentially this whole series he's been acting as this like anti, you know, weapons and anti-mass murder, and now he's committing an act of mass murder. It's this weird thing where like he kind of becomes a bomb, essentially snapping his fingers and snapping away all of Thanos' people. Yes, Thanos is the bad guy. Anyway, my point is that I think this film really gets to the heart of what a superhero is and what Stan Lee stood for. And you know, it's kind of fitting that this is one of the first ones to come out after Stan Lee's death. But the idea of like what makes a hero, and it's not about who we kill, it's who we save and who we protect and who we make better. And I love that so much, that it's all about not killing these villains in the end, but fixing them and then trying to send them back to their universes and make sure they can live lives that they should be able to. And I love how like Doc Ock, we see that switch early on, and then it kind of like gradually happens with each of the others. And I love how the other Spider-Man act as a guide to show that, because Tom Holland's Spider-Man is almost overwhelmed with anger. It's kind of like what you get at the end of Wakanda Forever with Shuri. It's like that idea that anger overcoming you, but then you have to like kind of, you know, choose good. And that's why I don't love Wakanda Forever as much of this, because I think Wakanda Forever kind of borrowed from this. I think this did it first and did it better. But I love that idea of like heroism and what it means to be a hero and what it means to save instead of kill. And that last scene is so heartbreaking and awesome where he's at the restaurant with MJ and she doesn't recognize him. It makes me want to cry talking about it. I love the ending so much. I think when it's not an action movie, it's strongest. When it's just these characters talking about heroism and what it means to be a hero and connection, and where Andrew saves MJ. Like, there's so many amazing moments in this thing still that even at home when it's not as magnified by the hype and the excitement of the crowd, it still works because of the themes and the story. And I think it's probably my favorite ending of any MCU film. I love it so much.
Yeah, I also love it. I have this at number 2.
Cool.
And there's only one reason why this is not number 1, and it's my number 1. But we'll get there. Spider-Man No Way Home. The pause for, applause and stuff like that. They do that in sitcoms and stuff all the time where people come in, they got to like cross their arms while everybody's like applauding or laughing or whatever's going on.
But at that point, you have laugh tracks. I wish they honestly put in clap tracks on Disney Plus so you could, or Stars, wherever you watch it, so you could like hear them clapping at that point.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too that Dylan alluded to is I have conversations with Dylan all the time after a Marvel movie, a lot of the times where he goes, that part was ruined in the trailer. And I not just him, I've heard that from a lot of people who are like, I wish and I think that is at the fault of Marvel in their marketing. They need to just like cool it. Everyone's going to see your movie. Well, maybe not everyone, I don't know. But a lot of people are going to see your movies anyways. Just give us a trailer, make it vague, tell us kind of what the story is, but don't show us everything. Me, I tune out during trailers, I guess, because none of that stuff was spoiled for me. So I just my ignorance all of the times, is bliss, I guess, because I just watch something and I'll go, oh shit. And then, Dylan or somebody else will be like, yeah, I already knew that like months ago. But yeah. I adore
I'm jealous. I do. That's a better way to live, Chad, because I really wish. Because if I didn't know these villains were coming, I would have lost my shit.
Right. Yeah, I adored this movie for like pretty much everything Dylan said, but just like, so much more for me is why it's my number 2 is just because like, I love where it picks up right after Far From Home. The news is spoiled. You get that great like singing, swinging sequence with him and MJ. Set to, I think it's called I Zimbra by Talking Heads. I just think it's such an incredible song, so fun, and that's what this movie is. It's fun, but it's deep. It has like so many just like great sequences with, like, look, everyone has their Spider-Man ranking. My favorite is always going to be Tobey Maguire. I just grew up with those movies. I adore the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. Even the third one I really, really love. And Tobey Maguire is just my Spider-Man. Tom Holland came out, instantly a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man. That's great. It was not mine. I liked him, but I was like, he's okay. Then this movie sold me on Tom Holland Spider-Man, sold me more on Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and then reclaims my love for Tobey Maguire. It did all of that in one movie and just said, all 3 of these are fantastic. And the sequences of them just like talking and joking around, it didn't feel like it was like weird kind of like, and I like this movie, but Ghostbusters 2016, like, riffing that just felt like it was going on and on. It didn't feel like that. It felt so natural and kind of like loving and like they all respected each other. And it just felt like really, almost like it was written. Maybe it was written or maybe they just had fun. I don't know. Like, when Andrew's like, how do you do that? And like, oh, can you crack my back? And just stuff like that. It just felt so fun and just how they would interact if they all got together. But yeah, the other Spider-Mans, Peter 2 and Peter 3 getting together and teaching this new Spider-Man. Like, he didn't have an Uncle Ben, but he had an Aunt May, and he has these other Spider-Men to come in, basically show him, like, lead by example. Like, this happened to me, and I went down a dark path, and if you're not careful, you can go down a dark path as well, but you don't have to. You can be, like, the better person, be that hero, and I feel like a lot of these movies and stuff about heroes don't really capture that exactly what Dylan says, just like, capturing that that like spirit of what it means to be a superhero, to be a hero in general in your everyday life and stuff like that, and to take the high road and to want to protect people even if they're not the best of people. Maybe you can make them be better people. by leading by example. There's so many great things. Spoiler: the Aunt May death, just all of that stuff, so heartbreaking, so incredibly done. And then Tom Holland's acting. Holy shit. Honestly, I'm like, how did he not get a Best Actor like nomination for that role? Because he was incredible in that movie. Yeah, Tom Holland, I'm sold on him now. I think he's just so great. Yeah, I could sit here and dissect this movie and just like love on it for so much, because for so long. I mean, because there's so much about this movie that I dug. Yeah, I just think it's a great crowd pleaser, but it's also just a brilliant movie. This is easily like top 5, maybe even top 3 of all time MCU, and I might even put this in my top 100. I love this movie.
Awesome.
Kerri, No Way
Yes.
Home. Is there a way home?
No way home. This was my number 3, so I just had it like kind of right in between everyone. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. This was just an incredible movie. Things probably would have paid off a little bit better if so much of it had not been spoiled by both, marketing and by, leaks or what have you. But it's amazing that despite all of that, this movie, I think, just pulls everything off still. It's such a, like you guys were saying, such a positive movie, such a positive message to say, look, we don't have to kill these villains. We can fix them instead, and kind of undoing the things that have been done in the other Spider-Man movies. It's just this one has so much heart. Like, just some of the scenes, like I think on from the point where Tobey Maguire stops Tom Holland from killing Willem Dafoe. I think from like that point on, like the movie is just so emotional. Like, especially that scene where, Peter Parker is telling MJ and oh my god, blanking on his name, Ned, that they have to forget him, and MJ's like,
and the score's building up.
Oh yeah, and when MJ is just like, but you'll come find us, right? It like makes me cry every single time. And then when he does find her, and he lets them go. This one just is so incredible.
But they're like sitting there talking about like their college plans, and it's just going to be without him because it's so incredible. And this is a Christmas movie, which is a plus.
It is.
And Willem Dafoe, incredible performance from him as well. James, what did you think about this one?
I definitely love Spider-Man No Way Home. It's an awesome addition to the whole Spider-Man movie list. I have this at number 4. Definitely one of the stronger ones. There's a lot of like awesome points that you guys have already touched on. What am I trying to say here? Yeah, the only like nitpicky things I guess I kind of have that, like you were saying right at the end when he stops him from killing the Green Goblin and Norman Osborn, right? But help me out with this scene here. Was that before or after he stabbed him in the back? Because like my whole thing is, if you they're both standing there, right? And Green Goblin's on the ground behind him, and then he definitely comes up and stabs one of them in the side.
Toby steps in the way to prevent Tom from hurting Norman, but then Norman stabs Toby in the back. And then Tom decides not to kill. And
that's the resolution we're arriving at here.
I think that part
the Green Goblin's going to stab you in the back, and that's like, oh, we'll just let that happen. Like, and then he only stabs him once. Like, I feel like if you have energy to stab someone in the back once, you can do it twice. So we just kind of let him get stabbed, and then one of the last lines is like, oh, but that really hurts, doesn't it? He's like, yeah, it does really hurt. Like he's not going to be bleeding out from getting stabbed the kidney once, and you're just going to let the Green Goblin sit there. Like, that was his final act of the movie, is just take this, like, eat this, Spider-Man, let me stab you inside. Like, that's kind of nitpicky things, kind of.
Yeah, let me interject just real quick on that, because I do agree with you. I think that's kind of like one of those things, like tropes in movies that happens that they threw in there for like a shock value. I don't love that part super either, but yeah, good point.
And aren't they running around in the end not in their masks? Like, I get the whole, like, I understand, like, if you have all wearing masks in the end, you could throw any three guys in the Spider-Man costume and run around the screen, but they were fighting with masks on. Like, I thought Spider-Man fights with his mask on when he fights all the main villains, or
I
most
think
of them, right?
I think they kind of each get their masks kind of like, for the most part,
Broken.
kind of broken or taken
Do they?
away.
Okay. All
Maybe
right.
Tom Holland doesn't take his off until he's like, trying to touch base with Doctor Strange, but
All right. Maybe I'm misremembering that
right.
then, but I
Um,
do like the small callbacks. It's a real brief scene. It happens real fast. But towards the end, when you've got, I think it's Electro and Doc Ock, or Electro and someone are kind of like jumping towards like one of the fight scenes, and Electro comes out, and for a brief second, the lightning strikes on his face, and it leaves the imprint of the little Electro mask from the comics. It happens real. It
Oh.
That's
happens.
kind of cool.
It's split second, but I cut it in the movie. But Electro, like, lightnings up or whatever. But the mask from the original comics, the little lightning bolt style mask, just flashes on and off, and it's just a brief second. I was like, I like when they do that kind of stuff. I appreciate that when Marvel throws that in there.
That's
So
really cool.
And they
it's
also
small.
did the Spidey sense, like you can see above his head.
All right, yeah. So
which
I
is
like
really
when they
cool.
do that. Again, it's the nitpicky things that kind of make or break the movies. Again, it's tropes, it's plot armor. They got to throw in some kind of shock value, but it kind of, to me, takes away from the scene. Maybe I don't consume product the same way everyone else does, or how I meant to when I go see these movies. But small stuff like that kind of can make or break it sometimes. So
Yeah.
you guys have probably known that about me from all these rankings too. I'll find some thing to pick at, but that's just what I saw when I watched the movie. But overall, it was awesome. Liked it a lot. One of the better movies of Phase 4.
No, that's great. We always love hearing your perspective. And then one thing I forgot to mention, like they kind of alluded to maybe a potential Miles Morales at some point coming up. When it said, I thought what he said, I thought there'd be a black one, Black Spider-Man by now.
Yeah.
Or, he says like,
Oh yeah.
Poor kid from
Figured you'd be
Queens,
black or something like
something
that.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he never saw Andrew without his mask in Spider-Man.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. All right. So we're done with that. Talking about that movie. Do we have another one to go to? Or
No, we're on our number 3s.
Number 3s. All right, I'll start. My 3 was Doctor Strange 2. Kerri, what was your 3?
My 3 was No Way Home.
James, 3.
I had WandaVision.
Dylan, 3.
My 3 is WandaVision.
All right. So now we can talk about WandaVision.
Yes, we can.
Because WandaVision was at my number 4. But we started with Dylan last time. We'll start with me with WandaVision for WandaVision number 4. Yeah, I think WandaVision is the best television show that came out, and it was the first one, and it was the best one. I understand. It devolves a little bit into a big MCU like CGI fight and stuff at the end. I get that. I get the thing. I get the whole what Ralph Boner thing is weird kind of thing. There are some issues with WandaVision. I don't think it's a perfect show, but I think what it does do, I think, is really incredible because it does stay focused. It's all about Wanda's trauma. Like everything that happens in this is about that. You get some really cool other things, like you reintroduce what's her name, Kat something Dennings,
Darcy.
Dorothy.
Yeah, Darcy. Yeah.
That Kerri doesn't like apparently. I think she's hilarious in that. I don't know about everything else. But yeah, you get Ray Parks. Is that his name? What is his name?
Randall Park.
Randall Park. Thank you. And then you also get
Ray Park is Darth Maul.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew I was something. And then you also get a lot of people in what was the town called? Westview. You get a Buffy cameo with the what's her name that plays Anya? Emma Caulfield. And then you also get is it Monica or Maria? It's Monica.
Maria's the mom. Yeah.
Monica Rambeau. There you go. This is why I don't do so great on MCU trivia. But
your last match was awesome.
Thank you. So I think all of that stuff that gets introduced is still always doesn't forget that it's focused on Wanda and her trauma, and I think they handle that so beautifully. Like the time where she has to actually let go, and they're embracing, and she knows he's about to like disappear and stuff like that always gets to me. I also love how the show is structured. I think it's probably the only one that has to be a show because of what it is. And how it's structured with the different eras of sitcoms. I think it doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for me. I thought that was pretty incredible the way they did that. And then when they went and they showed her back in the past with her parents right before the explosion, she sees the Stark Industries thing, and that causes a whole whatever. And then you get to see her have like a little suitcase of all these like shows, and you get to see Malcolm in the Middle, and then you just saw like the whole Malcolm in the Middle style 2000s sitcom where it's like all edgy and cool and stuff now, when it was all like classic and they were wearing in black and white and wearing like anyways. I think it's a very funny show. I think Vision is really great. Paul Bettany is really great in the show. I even really like Evan Peters' cameo, even though I kind of wish they would have like kept him in that, and so he could be Quicksilver in the MCU as well as just regular Marvel, and just like have that be some sort of bridge between it, because I just think he's so great as that character, and I just love Evan Peters just in general. But there's so many excellent things about this show that I think it just like works for me even better every time as overall. But I've always really liked that aesthetic of the sitcoms over the decades, because I always go like, oh, I love Lucy, I love like Three's Company, and just all these progressing through the 50s, the 60s, 70s, Malcolm in the Middle, all that stuff. And so I really dug this show. I think it's incredible. It was my number 4. Kerri.
Yeah, this was my number 1. I think
Nice.
I think this is probably, and it's so, maybe it's because it's so different from most of the other MCU projects, but I think it's one of the best things that has come out of the MCU. Just so unique and original the way it's structured. And I don't know. I think it's just it's also like one of the most beautiful things Marvel has done. Like so many of these episodes and the series as a whole are kind of like a meditation on grief and how we deal with grief and with trauma. And I think just setting it up, in this way, also like you kind of have the mixture of the sitcom world, and then you also have the mystery behind why is all of this happening, and it just works. I think so well. I think the acting is phenomenal too. Just Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany in these roles is just fantastic, and I'm so glad we get very little time with either of them, and definitely both of them together in the MCU movies, especially at this point when this came out. It's nice that we actually got to spend this time with them.
Yeah, and I actually also loved piggybacking off of that, like when this came out and everybody was so excited for MCU shows, and it was like everyone was dissecting every episode of the show and like, what does this mean? I remember watching Dylan's show, I'm sure maybe he'll mention that, where they were like, because Kelsey was all like, maybe Mephisto is going to show up, and he never will. He never will. But I just remember like when people were like, dissecting that. What does that mean? Did you see that in the corner? Like what? It's just so cool when it was like really hyped up and popular like that. And hopefully we get a return to that with like other shows. So James, what did you think about this one?
WandaVision was definitely a great show. I liked pretty much most aspect of it. I put it at number 3 on my list. I love the whole concept. It's like the whole like quiet town, like Revolutionary Road, Stepford Wives, Don't Worry Darling kind of thing, where things just kind of unravel into being something different, or there's more to it than is what appears in the beginning. I love that kind of take on this. I thought all the performances were awesome. I like another little small bit from this that I kind of liked was when, I forget the detective's name, but Randall Park's character, when he's talking to the one other lady, he gets out his business card, but he does it with the card trick, like pulls it out of thin. He's like, he's like, hey, by the way, and he pulls his card out like he learned from Scott Lang. So
Yeah.
that's like one of those kind of
That's
small.
amazing.
It's one of those small nitpicky things, but I love seeing that kind of stuff. Those small
Yeah.
little callbacks to the other shows and movies, which I guess this was the first Marvel show. Maybe I misremembered that
Yeah.
this came out before Loki. Whatever, I'll shit take my way through all this, so I'll whatever. But the concept, liked the when they get onto the outskirts of the town and all the people have the same like repetitive motion, just because all the energy was focused in the center of town where all the action is, where all the dialogue is, where all the character acting is. But on the outskirts of the town, driving around, it's all the people just like picking up the same thing up and down and like walking down the street back and forth, because she doesn't have as much focus on the edge of town when they try to get out of it. So I kind of like that. I don't know if it's like a knock to some Hollywood movies if you ever fall down the rabbit hole to like bad extra acting in movies. You have what's focused on the screen, but if you ever take a second and look at what's happening on the periphery, it's all mumbo jumbo sometimes. Even on better movies, even on good movies, it's all the extra acting just because it's not the focus. But if you look at it, it's not good sometimes. So I don't know if this was meant to like poke at that or not, but I liked that it kind of touched on everything outside of the focal area, was just the same repetitive motion from the people doing the same mundane task over and over and over again. That was just kind of interesting to me. I like how they played that. This was a great show though. I loved it.
Absolutely. Dylan, WandaVision.
Yeah, this was my number 3. For a while, it was my number 1. I think it was my number 1 up until Doctor Strange. And this isn't to shit on Doctor Strange. It's more so just because that villain turn is so sudden. I feel like we went through so much great grief. And at the end of WandaVision, she had almost kind of like accepted it and been like, all right, she was at peace with it. And then immediately it's like, gotta get my kids. I'm going to be evil again. And that didn't work for me. But honestly, that's something that's in the post-credit scene of WandaVision. So it's more of a flaw in WandaVision than it is Doctor Strange. But I just wish there was a little bit more of a natural change at the very end. I wish they hadn't put that post-credits in, just because it ended in such a perfect place before that. But like Kerri said, it's such a great portrayal of grief. It's such a great examination of sorrow and sadness. And coming off of Phase 4, I mean, that was a big thing. Was this is Phase 4. Coming off of Phase 3, this was that big thing of grief with the Endgame, and this Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki all take place around the same time, but it's like kind of that idea of like, what do we do now? And this was a really creative way to not just jumpstart the MCU back into full gear again, but do so in a really beautifully emotionally resonant way, but also a very creative way. Like Chad said, like this uses the formula of episodic nature very well. Like this and She-Hulk are the only 2 shows that I feel like actually commit to being TV shows and not just movies chopped up into 6 parts. Like I really do think this show feels like a show. Every episode's a different decade. And then at the end, it does all come together, but it makes sense and it explains why that was, but it still feels like an episodic thing. Every week we were waiting for the next episode. They had us going through all the cliffhangers and doing all the research. And I love that. I love when it feels like a television show and it's not just like, all right, what happens next in the story? It's like, okay, what is next week's episode going to be? What decade is it going to be? What references do you think they're going to be? What next piece of the puzzle are we going to get? And I like that. I think this is the best formula, and it's a shame that they haven't been able to top this in terms of use of the episodic formula since, because I think all of us put it, if not our number 1 show, our number 2 show. I know James had Loki higher, but like it's one of the best shows and it's the first show, and I think that says a lot about its staying power, even if I think her immediate switch into villainy at the post-credit scene is a little out of place. I still think, I mean, she loses her kids, so maybe what do you do? How far do you go for the people you love? So I guess it makes sense, but it was just a little too quick for me. But I really love this show so much. I love going back to it. It still makes me cry. That penultimate episode, just like Moon Knight, it's the second to last episode, always goes into the backstory and makes you cry. But I really like this one. I love the performances. I love Paul Bettany, especially because he gets to kind of be funny, and Vision is such like a straight man that like you get to see him actually like crack jokes and be the silly dad. And I really like that. And I like the Lynchian vibes in the first episode. Like I like a lot of the different vibes. The making of, go watch the making of this on Disney Plus, because the way they filmed that first 2 episodes with the black and white, everything's practical. The lobsters and everything floating is all practical. It's using strings because they really wanted to use the technology of the film, of the TV series that they were replicating. And I think that's so cool. They actually wanted to commit to the bit, and they really did. And I'm really happy with it. I love it. It's like Werewolf by Night. Like they committed to exactly what they wanted to do, and they did it in the most authentic way possible.
I think knowing that, maybe I'll watch that making of, and then rewatch the show, and it'll be even better for me. But it was already pretty high at number 4. So are we moving on to our 2s?
Yeah, James, you started with WandaVision. Or no, you started with WandaVision?
I did.
We all talked about it, right?
So what's your 2?
Yeah, we're doing
I
our
don't care.
2s.
Doesn't matter.
Are we done? My 2 was Loki, which we talked about.
Okay.
We haven't talked about 2 movies.
2 movies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my 2 was Guardians.
I know what Dylan's 2 is, and his 1. So, James, what is your 2?
I had Loki at 2.
That's right. Dylan, tell us about Eternals at number 2.
I'll be
Oh, I
honest.
forgot about Eternals.
I could have put Eternals number 1, but I had to stay true to myself. I wasn't just going to put Eternals number 1 for the bit, but it's my number 2. Yeah, it is.
All right. My number 2 was No Way Home. What's your number 2?
I already said it.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we can talk about Eternals and
then do number 1.
then do number 1.
And then
so talk
about
Guardians.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, you don't have to reveal it. I'm going to edit that out.
There's only one thing.
That's the only
anyway,
one we haven't talked about.
This process of elimination now.
All right. So, okay. I'm going to be the most negative on this, and Dylan's going to be the most
Do you want to
positive.
start with me and end with you, or start with you and end with me?
I'm going to start with me and then end with you,
Yeah,
so that
so
we could
end on
be
a good
more
note.
positive.
Yeah, cool.
And
And our opinions are totally valid either way. Just
absolutely. And
This
yeah,
isn't a
I'm
debate.
not going to just like trash on this movie or anything like that. Like, it's not something that I like vehemently despise or anything. Like, I know like some of the things that I've talked about in like certain circles and stuff like that may seem like that. It's just one that I just don't really care for. And I was like, really, I think my disappointment with this one, really shows through a lot of the times when I discuss it, just because like I was very hyped for this, because I remember the talk about this movie was Chloe Zhao had just made Nomadland and she was working on Eternals, and I was like, oh, Chloe Zhao, like I loved the writer that she made. That's such an incredible movie. I really liked Nomadland. I didn't like love it, but like it just won Best Picture, and I was like, my God, the rise of this lady, and she's just like crushing it. She's like going down, living in a van and making Nomadland, and then making an epic like MCU film. I was like, I'm so excited. And you got like Kumail Nanjiani getting ripped for this movie, and just like the talk about that, and it's just like it's gonna be incredible. Like, I've never heard of Eternals. I don't know what they are, but I'm excited to see what this is. And I like a lot of the actors that are in it, especially Kumail is one of my favorite comedians. And just, actually seeing this movie, I was hyped. Kerri can tell you, they play Pink Floyd's Time at the very beginning. And I was so stoked. I was like, oh, shit, I love this song. This is going to be incredible. And then everything after that was just, for me, a big muddled mess. They tried to, because it's so many characters of the Eternals, trying to cram so much into one movie. I don't even think this is 3 hours long, but they're like trying to like cram so much into this. But like, I feel like, I don't know if it's like Chloe Zhao's style, that she tries to make everything be this like depressing, because the writer's pretty depressing. Nomadland is very depressing. She tries to make it like this depressing like thing where every character's sad and everything is just melancholy. And I just like, I got that vibe from everything. Like, even the humor just felt like so out of place in this movie. That's just so, maybe she's trying to go for like a realistic vibe. Because I mean, I thought the cinematography was pretty great, but like everything else, like all the character stuff, just none of it worked for me. Like the whole, like, there's like a whole part with Ajax, like Selma Hayek, and help me out, Dylan. Who's the Superman guy?
Icarus.
Icarus. They tried to do this whole like betrayal thing with Icarus. I was like, they didn't even develop that relationship with those characters at all. Why would I care about that? Like, how would I feel that betrayal? Is this because like it's assumed because they've been like, they've known each other for eons, or whatever. It's like maybe you're supposed to just assume that relationship, but it's like every relationship in this, I just felt like it was just so not well written, not well realized. I don't think the acting was particularly that good. And just, yeah, for me, I just like watching it a second time. I was like, all right, maybe it was just the disappointment of the first time. I just like still nothing worked for me. Like I'm trying to think of like one thing that really did, and I just don't think it did. I think this is why it's my lowest ranked one. And I know there's a split. It's like it was the first Rotten Tomatoes scored movie, but then so many fans loved it. It was like at 90 something percent at one point. I was like, this is an audience love movie. I was like, how is this something that people like the audiences adore? And I think it has dropped. I think it's around like 70 something for audience. I don't even know how much, you need to put into, that whole audience score or whatever. But I know there's a lot of people like Dylan, like, that really actually still really enjoy this and like this. And I'm excited to hear him talk about it, because just for me, I just did not, nothing works for me in it. And it just like, I feel like every time it's about to work for me, it just like really doesn't. Like even Brian Tyree Henry, I think, is like he's sidelined for a lot of it. The one they have like the deaf girl, and like
Makari.
she's like Makari, like a lot of people love. She's sidelined so much that you forget about her until she shows up again at one point, and then you're like, oh yeah, there's that character that is missing for most of the movie. And I don't know, it's just like I hope they take the Eternals, and I don't know what's next for them, like if there's actually a planned thing, but if they could do like a show, like a series, I think that could work incredibly well. But like just one overstuffed movie, just not for me. And yeah, so hopefully I wasn't too negative, but that's just my thoughts.
It's your opinion, yeah.
And Kerri, what do you think of Eternals?
Yeah, this one, I think I had it just above you. I had it at number 15. I'll say I still like, I think Chad, when we got out of this movie, like actively disliked it. And
Okay.
I was entertained. I was entertained for, 2.5 hours or however long it was. So I found it entertaining. I do get Chad. I think I have it lower because I do get Chad's criticism about. I just don't think we get to know most of the characters enough to really care about them. Like I think I cared about Cersei and Sprite, and I kind of got their emotional story arcs and a little bit with Icarus too, but everyone else I kind of did feel like was a little bit sidelined, and I wish we had seen more of them, because these are all fantastic actors. This is like one of the most stacked casts ever. And yeah, I wish we had seen a little bit more from the characters and from the actors here. It's hard because you have such a large group of superheroes, and it is just one movie. It's not like how we got to Avengers, where everyone had their own separate movie for the most part. And we got to know them as characters and care about them. I think it's easier to establish that way. For this, yeah, I wish we had I don't know how else they could have done it. And I don't know if maybe part of it is, you're taking Chloe Zhao's style and trying to fit it into an MCU movie.
Yeah.
And I think in some respects it just didn't mesh as well. But that said, again, I was entertained for 2.5 hours. I didn't think it was a bad movie at all. And the visuals are stunning. I mean, because you have Chloe Zhao, and the visuals aren't not going to be stunning.
Yeah, and no, that's actually the point that you made that I also have been thinking about too. Is like it kind of felt like when MCU did the event or did everything leading up to the Avengers, then they had the Avengers, and then you had DCEU doing kind of like the opposite, where they're like, we're trying to get to Justice League as fast as possible. This was like instant Eternals. It's like maybe if you could have like set them up differently and then had a big team up,
I
you
don't
wouldn't have
know.
had to have all that development.
Or maybe there could have been a way to like develop them more, spend more time with each character, like balance
Like
it
a show.
out. I don't know. Yeah.
Hashtag should have been a show.
Should've been a show.
That's a
But
first.
also, and this is the last thing I think I'll say about this is like you brought up Sprite. That character annoyed the shit out of me because like it's like she was like, you know, she had a whole kind of arc thing, but then she was kind of happy or something, and then she like stabbed one of them. And then immediately after, they were like, "Yeah, we just kind of forgot about the stabbing, and we're gonna actually like make you happy now." And I'm like, "What is going on?" Okay, James.
I had Eternals at number 13. Yeah, that's one I don't think I like that much either. I think Chad and Kerri kind of talked on most of the points that I would too. Like it's a lot of like new characters immediately introduced. So it was kind of hard to throw in like that much backstory if it was really needed. I did kind of like them like seeing like civilizations kind of rise and fall like that. Like bit was kind of cool when they were going back through like the historical times. That was pretty interesting. I think I was pretty hyped for this movie too, but it mostly because it seemed more like not like dark or like, but I'll equate it to when that Fantastic Four reboot came out, or Fantastic. Here for called that. Like it was to be from the studio that did those X-Men Days of Future Past movies, right? So I thought we were going to get like that kind of darker, like grittier take on the Fantastic Four that we get from the X-Men Days of Future Past, because like Marvel movies are pretty like bright, like vibrant movies for the most part. If you look at like the Thor movies, if you look at even the Captain Americas, like they're just like bright movies. The screen's really bright, the colors are bright, the colors are vibrant. So to get like not like a flatter tone, like darker tone of the movies, like I kind of like that take on it, but it didn't. I don't know if it went that well for Eternals itself. There wasn't much else I think I liked about the movie. That was number 13.
Nice. All right, Dylan, you have the platform now.
It's tough because like the way I talk about this movie, like it's not like my favorite movie of all time, and it's not even like in my top 5 MCU films. It's just of this phase, it's my number 2. Like I really do really like it. I do think it has some problems. I think the biggest problem is some of the forced humor. I think it's one of those things where a few lines feel pigeonholed in there. Like they don't need to be there. That's kind of the MCU stamp, that the Kevin Feige-ness of it. But I think all in all, it feels just so refreshingly different from everything else. Like I really love Chloe Zhao's style. It's very laid back, very naturalistic. Like it's weird because this is a film about gods and the cosmos, yet it feels like it's on our earth. Like it feels relatable in that way that even like the Guardians movies, which I love, don't always have that feeling of, because everything feels like this, you know, they're all taking place on these planets and everything looks very otherworldly. We look at Quantumania, it's, you know, which we'll get to in the next phase, but it's, you know, very much, you can tell it's fake. You know, this is not our world. Here we're having otherworldly characters, but in a world that feels relatable, feels natural. I love the natural landscapes. So much stuff shot on location that I just love. I love when a movie feels lived in and like we can actually relate to it and see ourselves in these places. Yes, it's a darker tone and aesthetic James was alluding to, and I like that because, you know, they really play around with that aesthetic, you know, in a very creative way. You know, you don't have a bunch of dark clouds. You have a whole fight set in a dark forest, but because Icarus's eyes glow so bright, there's such a cool like blue yellow contrast with the lighting there, which I think is so well done. All the deviants, the way they're colored with the textures of the background. I love all this stuff on the beach side. The fact that the final fight takes place with the clouds and the sun in the sky, like you can see everything. It's just so refreshing coming off of like the famous like big, what do they call them, the sky beam type things. Yeah, like we see those in so many movies, and we see like Shang-Chi, it just becomes this dark stormy mess. So like seeing this movie kind of like woke me up and like made me feel like a breath of fresh air almost. As for the characters, I can see the argument that we don't get a lot of backstory, but I think the charm of Eternals for me, and the reason I love it so much and I lean in every time, is because this is a film that lets you, the audience, kind of uncover that yourselves. You know, like you can kind of see this, you see it's kind of like a familial unit at the start, and then they flash forward in the future, and everyone's in their own separate ways. Cersei has a new boyfriend, and all these people live in different places. Gilgamesh and Thena live somewhere, and Makari is nowhere to be found. Like, everyone is gone, and the whole thing is it's like a getting the band back together type thing. And as you reintroduce each member to the team, essentially, you kind of see where they've been, what they've been up to. And I think we do get a lot of backstory through that. We don't see it, but we hear it. And I think it's one of those things where a lot of the time Marvel is so used to showing, not telling. And this is the opposite, where we're getting a lot of great interactions, but they don't necessarily have to go through, oh, here's what you missed, and show us a 5-minute montage of where Kingo has been. Instead, he talks about, oh yeah, no, I acted in all these movies, and like, here are my posters. And then that's all you need to know about Kingo. You know what he's been up to. And then you get to Thena and Gilgamesh, and just by talking to them for like a few minutes, you can understand the pain that Thena's been through with her condition. And you see how much Gilgamesh has been sacrificing to care for her. And then you see Phastos becoming a dad. Like, I think we're getting a lot of backstory. It's just not shown to us, and it's kind of introduced to us through those dialogues. And I really love that, the idea that these people are so connected, and we, the audience, might not be connected to them, but seeing them interact with one another, we can still immediately understand the relationships. The Makari and Druig stuff, the fact that those little glances, and the fact that she can't even speak, but you just see them together and you know, oh, they're doing it. They're cute. They're crushing on one another. And that's the reason Kelsey and I, when we combined our list for best couples on Valentine's Day, Makari and Druig were number one, because they are such a charming little couple. They're not like married. They're not, there's no high stakes like Wanda and Vision, but they're just a sweet. It's so sweet and natural. It feels like we're just watching. It almost feels like we're watching a documentary, essentially, of these people interacting with one another, almost like home videos of a certain time and place, seeing where these characters have come from, and kind of going back into their backstories without having to show their backstories, and just kind of understand it from their relationships. Seeing Sprite kind of act as that annoying kid. I was with Chad. I found her really annoying, but then rewatching it, I'm like, no, but that's kind of the point. Like Miss Marvel, like, you kind of have to have that immature figure, so that at the end, when she finally, you realize that she acts immature because she wants to be immature. She wants to have a childhood, but she can't, because she's stuck as a kid. She doesn't get to grow up, and she can't go to school, because if she keeps going to school, when she gets to high school, she's still going to look like a 12-year-old. She doesn't age. So she can't go to school with the normal kids. And so she's deprived of that. And that's a really sorrowful thing, to where I feel pain for Sprite. And Sprite has gone from my least favorite character to one of the most fascinating, because she has that arc. And then at the end, when you finally get to see her become human and decide to go to school, it's like, it's touching, because you understand, even in a short amount of time, you feel connected, or at least I felt connected. And I think that was the magic of Eternals, is it didn't give me a ton of flashbacks, but it gave me enough from their interactions alone, to where at the end, when they were having those emotional moments, I felt emotional too, because the actors and the storytellers convinced me so much that these relationships mattered. I love Chloe Zhao as a writer director. I love the actors. I think the actors, like Kerri said, it's stacked. I mean, Brian Tyree Henry, Oscar nominee. Barry Keoghan, Oscar nominee. Kit Harington, Game of Thrones, Emmy nominee, I believe. Like, even Lauren Ridloff, who's a lesser known name, huge actress in the deaf community. She was in Sound of Metal. She's the teacher in Sound of Metal. She was in Walking Dead. She's amazing. And my favorite superpower is super speed, and I don't really want to root for the Flash right now in DC, so it's nice to have this alternative. I just really, really, really am just so swept up in this film, what it has to say about God complexes by using actual gods, and what it has to say about humanity, and certain roles in humanity, and the idea that this can span time, and the relationships. But ultimately, it's such a grand story, but at the same time, it's such a personal story too, because you have all these intertwining relationships. I felt like I was with this the whole way through, but I get people who aren't. And some people want the backstory laid out. Some people want to kind of like just see where they are now and kind of figure out that backstory for themselves. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think there's just certain types of viewers and what they are more interested in seeing. I personally don't love origin stories where I'm like, all right, can we just get to the next step? And this feels like that. Like, okay, I don't need an origin story for each one. I just want to see what they're up to now. And then the origins will kind of come in later. Kind of what Shang-Chi did. It kind of just threw us in there. And then as the movie goes on, you kind of find out about Sean's past and Shang-Chi as a child throughout the movie. And that's what this kind of was. It was an interesting new take to an origin story. And introducing so many characters, I still felt connected to most, if not all of them. The only one maybe that I wasn't as much connected to was Gilgamesh, because they kill him off so fast. But even then, in his short moments, we understand his relationship with Thena because of how Thena grieves. her crying over Gilgamesh is all the backstory I need for those characters. I understand the relationship entirely. I feel like in that moment where she's holding him when he's dying, I immediately in my head have the entire 600 years of backstory. And I think that's the power of this movie, is just through those interactions, being able to find who those characters are to their roots. Also, great representation, gay representation, black representation, deaf representation, Asian representation, a sex scene in a Marvel movie. Like, it feels very progressive. Like, we're kind of like just doing something new and going forward and trying to reach a bigger audience. So I really love this one. It's not perfect. I think the humor's forced. But aside from that, I really do like this movie a lot.
Perfect.
I know I talked for a while. I'm sorry. I know Chad was zoning out, but I love it so much.
There's your number 2. That's great. Yeah. So
We'll do our number ones, and then we can talk about the last movie.
all right. Well, Kerri, you start with number 1 because I know what mine and Dylan's are.
Okay, mine was WandaVision.
James.
Mine was Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Dylan.
Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
Mine was also Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Yeah, number 1.
Yay!
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do Kerri and then end on me.
Okay. Where did I have this? Number 2. This is my number 2. It's getting late.
Sorry, my 20-minute Eternals monologue. I'm sorry.
No. That is not you. It is. I figured out like at 11. So, yeah, this was. Oh my god, I'm just losing my train of thought. It was hilarious and it was heartwarming and it was beautiful. I'll let you guys talk about the specifics of it. But I know Chad, like literally we had to pause it at least twice because Chad, sometimes he goes into these fits of like uncontrollable laughter, and he had at least 2 of those, which is like incredible. Like these happen like once every few years.
Well,
it
was like
while watching this.
It was a few times during that. It was a few times during Weird.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So it was a delight to watch and a delight to watch Chad watch.
James, what do you think about the Guardians Holiday Special?
I love the Guardians special, man. That thing was so funny. I love pretty much all of it. I don't even know how I could pick apart maybe some of the not good parts. I had this at number 6, though. I guess there were some things I just liked a little more in Phase 4. When they panned to Kevin Bacon when they tried to save Star-Lord's Christmas, that was immediately hilarious to me. I love the inclusion of that when Drax has to pick between, I forget what it is, but it's the Green Man, and then there's something else, and he kind of like just stares at it for a second because he's the Green Man. Like that part was just too good. There was one line when Kevin Bacon tries to get away from him, and it's Nebula, and she's like, "You cannot run me, Bacon!" Like just this like falling off line like that were just too good. It was hilarious. I loved it. I'll pass on to the
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's my number 1. I think it's so short that it's hard to like go deep into it, but it's just such a charming Christmas special. I think it just does everything perfectly. I don't think there is a flaw to be had. And does it have the most stakes of any movie? No. Does it have the most amazing visuals? It's one of the better ones, but no. And is it one of the deeper ones? Probably not, but it's perfect for what it is. I think it's hilarious. I think the cameo is great. I love how it focuses on someone. I love Star-Lord in bits and pieces in the MCU, but I love how it wasn't just like, he's our main character, so it's got to be about him. It's like, no, we're going to let the side characters have a little quest because this is a special. This isn't a Guardians sequel. And I like how with every Guardians movie, we've gotten more of the ensemble-ness of it. And Drax is my favorite Guardian. He's my second favorite MCU character after the Hulk, so it's nice to just see him get his spotlight, especially because Dave Bautista, he's going to be doing his last one soon. So it's just really cool to see this come together so well. Also, little tidbit, the old 97s is my aunt's favorite band. We're obsessed with Rhett Miller in my family. She introduced me and my siblings and my mom and my dad to Rhett Miller when we were little. We would drive around the car singing Meteor Shower and all his songs, his solo stuff. But, Old 97s is the band he was in. And I love seeing them cameo in this. It's just so fun. I love it to pieces. It's one of those things where if I had to rank this on like, I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's late, but like rank it on prestige. It might not be number one, but if I'm just ranking them on my favorites and what I think is the most enjoyable to me, it's like I'd rather watch this WandaVision and Eternals. Like these ones I love to pieces, and I just think this one is just so fun, so awesome. So, Chad, take it away.
Well, I definitely agree with you on this one, Dylan. Yeah, no, no, I absolutely loved this one. Like, it was no way home for me. Ever since that one came out, I was like, nothing's topping this freaking thing. And then this came out. I didn't know what to expect from it, but it really gave me everything that I could ever want in an MCU thing, or just really a Christmas thing, just in general. I'm just a really big Christmas person. Like, just get so excited. Like, I'm sorry, as soon as Halloween is over, because I also love Halloween, I'm like, Christmas time. And then everyone's like, no, Thanksgiving's also in there. I'm like, I don't like that holiday at all. You also get food on Christmas, so who cares about Thanksgiving? I don't care. I eat turkey every day. I don't need
Chad,
it.
Thanksgiving or Eternals, you can only break my heart once. Don't do it twice.
I'm sorry. Okay. Anyways, yeah, you can go watch Eternals on Thanksgiving, and I'll be over there.
Thank you.
Anyways, yeah, I adore this one so much. It continued my love for Drax, because I agree with Dylan wholeheartedly. He's the funniest character in the entire MCU. He's just like Dave Bautista's like comedic, like comic delivery is just so incredible with his, all of his stuff, like the funny little man stuff, and calling Mantis ugly, and just tossing her over the wall. Like, what are you doing? And I just love like everything with Mantis in this, like, which is crazy because I did not really care for Mantis before this thing. And now I love her because I think this like really made her character so funny, likable, just all this stuff. Like, I really want to rewatch Guardians 2 and just like fall in love with her character now that I love her from this, because I just think she gets so much to do. Like, the focus is on her and Drax for most of it. Going to kidnap Kevin Bacon for a gift is just like hilarious. It's just like a big theme with Guardians is the whole Kevin Bacon bit. It's like, we're just like Kevin Bacon. And then they go out and steal him and bring him. And then when, Peter realizes what they've done, he's like, you can't do this. This is human trafficking and stuff like that. It's just like all the jokes, all the humor just works so well. And it's one of the sweetest things I've ever seen. Like, look, Kevin Bacon gets stolen. He tries to run away. Like James says, what's her face runs after him. And then immediately when he's like, take me home kind of a deal, he's made aware of like what Peter's going through. And then he's like, hey, hun, I'm going to be home late. I got to save Christmas. I got stuff like that. And then he goes and he sings a song, and the songs in this are incredible. Just like Dylan was talking about the old 97s, that first song is just so funny with them getting everything about Christmas wrong, and Peter like, what? No, that's not right. It's just like hilarious, and you got Groot in the background, just like everything is this screams Guardian, screams Christmas, screams comedy, MCU, James Gunn, just like all of it works so well. Hilarious, cute, heartfelt. It really gets me in those Christmas vibes that I just adore. I freaking love that Kevin Bacon song when he's like, you just want someone to love you and hold you. And I'm just like, that's exactly what you want at Christmas time. And I was like, song's perfect. The thing is perfect. And I just love it so much. And like Kerri said, it just like, it cracks me up like none other. And yeah, I adore it so much. I had to put this number one.
Yeah. One more thing, Chad.
Yeah.
My dad has never seen an MCU movie, and I wanted to watch this like when it came out, like around, I think it was right after Thanksgiving, actually, not even Christmas. But we were all home, and my dad's like, "Sure, it's like only an hour. Sure, you can put it on. I'll just do work or whatever." And he watched the whole thing because my mom and I are big MCU fans, so we were watching, and my dad was there, and he loved it. And he goes, "They're so funny." Talking about Drax and Mantis, he almost wants to like watch not all the films, but the Guardians films because those two are so funny. And I told him, I was like, yeah, like this and he was asking, he's like, are all the MCU movies like this? And I'm like, honestly, no, but like the best humor of the best ones, like you'll get them like this. So I think this is his gateway drug to the MCU, which is kind of cool because like most people have been with it way earlier. So it shows that people can still find love even in Phase 4, which is supposedly a bad phase to a lot of people. It's cool that projects are still bringing in new fans just by being great standalone things.
And I don't know, and we can get into our overall thoughts in a second. Because I don't really agree, but I love that your dad's getting more into this, especially the Guardians, because I'm of the opinion that if they nail Guardians 3, it's going to be just like one of the greatest trilogies of all time, with that holiday special being an epic bonus to counter that. Just because I just love those first two movies and the special, and it's just all coming together to be fantastic. My quick thoughts on Phase 4, because we should wrap it up, is that I think Phase 4 overall, it's weaker than Phase 3, but you have all that summing up. This is like the new era. No one really knows what this is supposed to be. This is the starting point for a lot of things. It's them trying shows, trying specials, trying things. And I honestly, even though I didn't like Eternals, that's them trying something different. And I think that all that should be applauded, even if you don't like it that much. And I think people being super negative, is kind of harmful, even though I understand, because I know like people are experiencing the Marvel fatigue, and I get that. I am somewhat at some points too, but then I'm freaking excited about Guardians 3, so I don't have that fatigue yet. Anybody else?
I'm with you in the fact that like I think just because there's so many Phase 4 projects, including TV series, which are long, and it all happened in like 2 or 3 years, I do think there's a little bit of that fatigue in the sense that when we had that break, WandaVision I think was so good because we had so much time off. I wish there was more time given. And that's why them delaying the Marvels, I'm fine with it, because I think the more time between projects, the more excitement can build. I think that's my only qualm, is that all these things happen to where some of them I think get just a little forgotten just because so many things are followed up by something else. Even Love and Thunder I don't really like, but immediately Black Panther came out right after, to where I was like, oh, okay, I kind of forgot about Love and Thunder by now. So it's okay. Like I think even the bad ones, the next one's right around the corner with Phase 4, so you can still look forward to something. Whereas Phase 5, I think they're going to take more time. So we'll see. And I think Phase 5 is going to just find one more of a singular direction. But I do believe that they should stand on their own as well. So I'm fine with them not necessarily all having to point toward one specific thing like the Infinity Stones did. So I'm mixed on it, but I think the best stuff of Phase 4 is still really good.
Perfect. All right. Is that the last thoughts? All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This was an exciting episode, a little bit long, but Phase 4 was long. This was like long in the making. Oh yeah, we have the overall ranking. Kerri just subtly reminded me about. But I will say, it's very, very exciting to get this done because it was such a long time in the making, waiting for Phase 4 to wrap up, and then finally getting to talk about all these films that we hated, liked, loved. I don't know. Kerri, what is the ultimate you ranking with me ranking of Phase 4?
Yeah.
The correct rankings.
So we had 3 ties. So I'm going to start at 13 with What If. At number 12, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. At number 11, tied are Hawkeye and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. At number 10 tied are Black Widow and Eternals. At number 9 tied are Ms. Marvel and Thor Love and Thunder. At number
8.
I messed this up.
That's okay.
Oh.
How badly?
All those numbers, just like add 1 to them.
So this is now number 9.
This is now number 9.
Okay.
Werewolf by Night.
Okay.
At number 8, Moon Knight. At number 7, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. At number 6, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
All right, this is the top 5.
Yes. At number 5, Loki. Number 4, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Nice.
Number 3, No Way Home.
Okay.
Number 2, WandaVision. And number 1, The Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
Wow.
Wow. I can't believe that.
That's a solid top 5.
We actually had a very similar top
5.
3, 4.
3.
Like a lot of, I think
Yeah.
like our top 3 was in mostly everyone's top
Yeah,
5.
and I guess the hottest take is Dylan with the Eternals at number 2, but
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
sold it for why he liked it so much. So
I was
yeah,
gonna say you didn't comment, so I wasn't sure if I sold you or not. Chad.
no.
After
You didn't
my
tell
spiel.
me, but like maybe the next time I watch it, I do a full MCU watch. Maybe I'll have those thoughts in mind. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, great ranking, guys. This was awesome. We went over 3 hours, which is long, but it's fine because we had a great time doing it. It's a long time in the making. And now we can move on to other things. I think we were spitballing a couple different things, like maybe like M. Night Shyamalan. I can't remember everything. Like I got to get a David Lynch in there at some point. But what'd you say, Dylan?
Planet of the Apes, I think you wanted to do.
Planet of the Apes would be incredible.
Yeah.
So
Can we
so there's
talk
a lot
about
of.
Spider-Man also.
I would be down for a legitimate Spider-Man ranking. Yeah, that would be incredible too. So
Does
yeah,
Morbius count in that?
Definitely.
we'll talk about it.
Okay,
I
then I'm in.
don't know.
Absolutely, it
I don't know
counts.
if
Hell
you do,
yeah, it
like-
counts.
I don't know if you do Morbius and Venom, but maybe if you want to add those in, that could be interesting. We'll have
It
to.
was a joke, but now I'm tempted.
No, I'm like thinking about it. Like they're technically kind of like Spider-Man ilk, so yeah, why not? But anyways, yeah. Thank you guys for discussing this with me. Thank everybody who watched this for watching. Please watch our other videos that we did. I won't list them all, but we did a lot of great ones. A big Disney animated ranking. We did all 61 movies. It took us 5.5 hours long. If you thought this was long, that was pretty long. Yeah. So, thank you for watching. Like I said, like and subscribe to the channel. And shit, you guys ranking with me?
Yep, always.